Ahmad Panua Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakatha Yahweh, Basham, Yahweh, Asherah, Nathan the Nawa, Hashabeth, Bashalawam, the water, Aman. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the Sabbath in peace. Thank you, so be it. The Aliyah Ma'asharai Machad, Psalms 121. Anya Rayam Aimya Al Hariam Mayan Yabawa Sorry Yabawa Maya Hawa Shashad Shemayam Waratiza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala Yanawam Joshua Marka Hanay La Yanawam Wala Yeshan Shashumar Yeshirale Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayo Ya Yim Yawumam Hashamash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamari Makau Ra Yashamar Napashya Yahweh Yashamar Habalakya Wabawa Aya My Fa Wa Aid I Willam Basham Yahweh for what Aman.
Psalms 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shemaiah Sharela, hero of Israel. Shemaiah Sharela, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shemaiah Sharela, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shemaiah Sharela, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abinawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shanka Yahweh Malakwaka Taba'a Rutazawanka Hayya Aisha Baratazan Kaba Shemayim Nathanawa Lakham Yawam Zad Wasalak Nawa Kabawat Nawa Kasalak Nawa Kabawat Yinawa Well, Abiyar Nawa, oh, the silent above, I was shine Nawa, Murray, Kaya, Laka, Amalakwa, Wa Allah, Wa Thaparat, Why Willam, Aman.
Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner, therefore, pray, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'ai Sharama Tazawat, the Ten Commandments. La'at,
La'at,
Yahayat,
Yahaya,
Lakat,
Lakar,
Alahayim,
Alahayim,
Akariam,
Akariam,
Alpinyat,
Alpunya,
La'at,
La'at,
Thaishat,
Taisha,
Lakat,
Lakar,
Paso,
Pasa,
Wala'at,
Wala'at,
Thaibadam,
Duaibadam,
La'at,
La'at,
Talakwakath,
Talakwaka,
Shamweb,
Shamwa,
Yahaweb,
Yahawah,
Alahayakab,
Alahayka,
Lashaweb,
Ashua,
Zakar,
Zakar,
Ath,
At,
Ayawam,
Hayawam,
Hashabath,
Hashabat,
Lakwadashweb,
Lakodashwa,
Kabad,
Kabad,
Abiyakab, Wa
Amaka,
Amakab,
Wa Amaka,
La'at,
La'at,
Taratazak,
Duratizak,
La'at,
La'at,
Tana'ap,
Tana'at,
La'at,
La'at,
Daganab,
Kaganab,
La'at,
La'at,
Ta'ainat,
Aina,
Shakur,
Shakor,
La'at,
La'at,
Tachamad,
Rakamad,
Ko,
Kad,
Asharet,
Asherah,
Lara'aika,
Laraika,
Aman.
Aman. Exodus 20 and 2. And the Lord thy God which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt out of the house of bondage, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Aman, Yeshabwa, be seated. Barakataya Hawa, Bashani Hawashai, Asharat, Fananawa, Paria Gapan, Dawada Aman. La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahawashai, Ah, Yasha Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the fruit of the vine, thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. Amadwa, Panyua Yerushalayim, Santa Fe, Jerusalem. Barakatha Yahweh, Agado, Rakawam, Abiyar, Wanawa'e, Aliyawan, Malak, Shal, Shemayim, Warataza, Wako, Dabarian, Kayayan, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahabnawa, Hapalag, Yawaitaza, Yahawashai, Zakarnawa, Yahawa, Baratazawan, Ainka, Yashala, Zarnawa, Banat, Wasat, Yashala, Oh, Nanawa, Yemyan, Aitha, Kayawamyam, Makwadam, Babakusha, Shalak, Mike Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayam, La, Maganawa, Rapharnawa, Washamak, Ilnawa, Bakwa, Shalak, Haruka, Shau, Yawashai, Lanawa, Lalamanawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Sabawana, Wada Aif, Shal the Barka Basham Yahawashai the Waditham Yed Why Willam Man. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hathawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Awar, Larawat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, La Korah, Ha'aim. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hasheman, Zayat, Lamashak, Yasha'allah, Yeshabah. You see it. Okay, so Shalom Yasharallah.
Shalom.
So Shalom, everybody that's here in the Philly school. Shalom, everybody watching us on live stream, and Shalom, everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Asharallah Kanas with the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found throughout the Americas, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that we fall into a lower state politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God, found the Bible given to us by Moses, and that we come out of this lower state that we fall into as a people by turning back to these commandments we broke, by following Jesus Christ as our example. One way we do that is by keeping the Sabbath day holy, which is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown every week, as it is written per the scriptures. And what we're going to do today, as we do our particular branch of Christ, we keep a Sabbath service regularly. Today's Sabbath service is going to be 1 Maccabees 9 and 10. Once again, 1 Maccabees chapters 9 and 10 will be our Sabbath service for today. My name is Nabia Zerubbabel. I have the privilege of doing the service for you guys today. All praise to the Most High in Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. And you can write down for your records according to the Gregorian calendar that most of the Western world goes by. It's July 23rd, 2022. But according to our calendar, the Hebrew calendar or the solar lunar calendar, it would be the 4th month and the 25th day. Once again, the 4th month and the 25th day. And these are some really good history about going to today. Try to go through it judiciously, where we get through everything because the chapters are rather long. So I'll go through it, give the sense, try to be as brief yet as complete as possible, so we can get through these chapters and get through this very important history. As we see in the title, Judas' rest and Jonathan's rise, as we're going to get some unfortunate news in this chapter as far as Judas and what's going to happen to him in battle. But even though the misfortune that he found, he would have brothers that would take his place and stand up, just as their father had commissioned for them to do before he rested, right? Or slept. Because when we die in righteousness, the scriptures refer to us as what? Going to sleep. Or sleeping. So that's what we know in the case of Judas, since he was a righteous man, right? Who fought for the nation and who upheld the Most High's righteousness and everything that he did when it came to word and deed. So let's get this history. So this is First Maccabees chapter 9 in verse 1. Now remember, because I think Khan Samat was going into it before, where we don't just have the Greeks now, we have the Romans now coming into play, right? As far as them being another nation that's on the rise. While the Greeks are still the dominant empire, the Greeks are falling, but then the Romans are rising up. It's not something that happens overnight. Similar to how when you had the Babylonians in power, you had the Persians and the Medes as a power that was up and coming. And then it wasn't until that writing on the wall incident in Daniel, that was when the power eventually shifted over from the Babylonians over to the Persians and the Medes. Then they had their time to reign. Then you had the conflict between the Medes and the Persians with the Greeks. And the Greeks rose up. But that didn't happen overnight either. So we're in that transition period during the time of the Maccabees, from the time of the Greeks to the rising up of the Romans. Leading up to a couple hundred years later, which would be the time of actually between 100 and 200 years. Because the events we're reading about right now are around the time of 160 BC. So about a century and a half later, we would be in the time of Christ. At least from the time, the history point that we're here now in the time of the Maccabees. And I have our trusty Bible Atlas up, but when we get to the event here in the scriptures, I'll pull up that map again so we can show at least the location of where a significant event took place. Let's read it. First Maccabees chapter 9 and verse 1. It reads, "Furthermore, when Demetrius heard that Nicanor and his hosts were slain in battle, he sent Bacchides and Alcimus into the land of Judea the second time, and with them a chief strength of his hosts." So Nicanor, a great enemy of Israel, was brought down, right, by the strength of the Most High. And Judas, his strength being behind Judas and those that fought with them. So now they're responding to send more troops there. It says in verse 2, "Who went forth by the way that leadeth to Gagala, which is some of your Bibles, it'll say Galilee in the side caption, so just the northern part of Israel. And pitched their tents before Mazaloth, which is in Arabella. After they had won it, they slew much people. Also, the first month of the 150th the second year, they encamped before Jerusalem." So now they're in the springtime, getting all the way down to Jerusalem at this point, because the Seleucid dynasty was north and east of the land of Israel. So they would come down southward and westward to meet them. That's why they were positioning themselves in the northern part of Israel before they would come down into the southern kingdom, which is where Judah was, the kingdom that is. Verse 4, "From whence they were moved and went to Berea with 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen." So we see they got infantry and cavalry coming in, right? A nice sized force. It says, "Now Judas had pitched his tents in Elasa, and 3,000 chosen men with him, who, seeing the multitude of the other army to be so great, were so afraid, whereupon many conveyed themselves out of the host, insomuch as there abode of them no more than but 800 men." So very similar to what we read about in times past with like Judges, where I'm thinking of Gideon in particular, right? The judge who fought against Midian, who was had us captive back at that time. How he had certain men where he said, "Look, if you're not willing to fight, then just go home," right? And yeah, a lot of men go home to where he was down to 300. And now we see a similar scenario here where Judas is down to 800 men at this point. It says, when Judas therefore saw that the host slipped away, and that the battle pressed upon him, he was sore troubled in mind and much distressed, for that he had no time to gather them together. So he's trying to regroup them and say, look, we can do this. Look at all the things we've done before. Let's fight these battles, right? And the Most High will fight with us. But it shows you, as strong as we can be, situations will fall upon us where we'll be afraid, right? And we'll be distressed. So a great man like Judas is no different. Yet we're going to see what he does still, even though facing these fears. Nevertheless, unto them that remain, he said, let us arise and go up against our enemies, if peradventure, perhaps, we may be able to fight with them, right? So he said, for those of you that remain, 800 of you that are still here, let's go and handle this business like we've done before, right? And may the Most High allow us to fight with them as he's done before. It says, but they dehorted him, saying, we shall never be able. Let us now rather save our lives, and hereafter we will return with our brethren and fight against them. For we are but few. So now even those that remain are saying, look, maybe we just shouldn't fight right now. Maybe we should just save our lives, right? Let's not go into battle, right? We're few in number. Verse 10, then Judas said, God forbid that I should do this thing and flee away from them. If our time be come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor, right? So even though he's against these insurmountable odds with few men and other resources, he's saying, let's take it out and fight. So this is an excellent example of courage, right? In the face of impending doom, but trusting in righteousness, not just in their own strength, but in the strength the Most High provides for those that serve him and that seek him out. With that, the host of Maccabees removed out of their tents and stood over against them, the horsemen being divided into two troops, and their slingers and archers going before the host. And they that marched in the forward were all mighty men, meaning those that were in like the front part of his army, right, that led the battle. It says they were mighty men. As for Maccabees, he was in the right wing, so the host drew near on the two parts and sounded their trumpets, right? So he positioned himself in the right wing. So you look at the old battle formations. We played a video before when we were going through Alexander back when we started Maccabees. We showed that video where they were showing the movie where they did an all right job of showing how in ancient warfare, how they arranged the army. You had like a center, you had a left wing, a right wing, a flank, right? And then based on different hand signals, right? Where there was Alexander on one side or Darius on the other side, they would do different hand signals that would signal, the right wing to go forward, the left wing to go forward, the left wing to stay in position, the center to go forward, the center to stay in position, right? Et cetera, et cetera. It says in verse 13, they also, Judas' side, even they sounded their trumpets also, so that the earth shook at the noise of the armies, and the battle continued from morning till night. So check that out. They sounded with their trumpets, and it says that the earth shook at the noise of the armies. So we know this to be true. From then till now, the Most High can do much with one, with a few, or with many, right? We know that's part of the promise the Most High said in Leviticus 26. He said, what? 5 of us will be able to take on 100 of them. And 100 of us should be able to put 10,000 of them to flight. So what could the Most High do with Judas and his 800 at this point? Right? Great things. We've had examples in times past too, where he just had one man himself pray before the Lord, and the Most High, as it was his will, caused the whole army to fall apart and collapse. Right? So the Most High can. The hope is that he will, for our sakes, when times get tough. It says in verse 14, now when Judas perceived the Maccabees and the strength of his army were on the right side, he took with him all the hardy men who discomfited the right wing and pursued them unto the Mount Azotus. Right? So while in battle, he figured out, okay, here's where their strength is at. Oh, here's where the leader's at. Let's hit them where it hurts the most. Because we take out the leadership and the strong men, it'll cause the rest to break up and flee. Right? Who discomfited, I read that 16, when they of the left wing saw that they of the right wing were discomfited, they followed upon Judas and those that were with him hard at the heels from behind. So they tried to surround him. Whereupon there was a sore battle, insomuch as many were slain on both parts. Judas also was killed, and the remnant fled. So Judas fought in his battle, going to war against Maccabees. It says, then Jonathan and Simon took Judas their brother and buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers in Modin. Right? If you go into that place in archaeology, you'll see those headstones are still there, right? You see it in the Zondervan. You look up Maccabees, they show a picture of those stones in Modin that remain. So Judas ended up falling in battle here. Yet we know that what? He died in righteousness and died courageously. So we have this record of him in scriptures to be motivated by, right? Not only this, but then also all the great things he did before his death. It says in verse 20, moreover, they bewailed him, and all Israel made great lamentation for him, and mourned many days, saying, how is the valiant man fallen that delivered Israel? So it was a great time for mourning for us in the case of Judas falling in battle, howbeit courageously. 22, as for the other things concerning Judas and his wars, the noble act which he did in his greatness, they are not written, for they were very many. Right? So the scriptures don't have everything, but what the scriptures do have is important enough to consider. Right? That's something we want to be mindful of. Right? And I always like the link with this verse always makes me think of chapter 9 and verse 22. It makes you think about what we always are up against when we teach about Christ and the great things that he did, right? Where people say, what about when Christ between the ages of 12 and 30, there's a gap in the Gospels. He doesn't really talk about what he was doing. I got this book that says he was out here doing this or out here saying that. And it's like, look, the scriptures have the things that are needful for us to know that when he did come, he was indeed the Christ. So the Gospels focus on the things that go back to the scriptures in the Old Testament saying what the Messiah would do when he came into earth, riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, right? His hands being and feet being pierced, him being born in Bethlehem, right? Et cetera, et cetera. These were prophecies that were in the Old Testament written by the prophets before him. Those are the things that we see the Gospels focus on, because that's the whole point. That's why it says this at the end of the Gospel of St. John. Check this out. So we'll acknowledge that. You just don't make a big deal out of it. And we say wisdom would seek out the things that are written. Knowledge would seek out the things that aren't. But wisdom would say, before we seek out the things that aren't in the scriptures or that are quote unquote missing, let's try to understand what's actually here. Because folks don't have even come to understand what this is talking about. But they're so worried about, what about this book? What about that book that's missing? So here's the last verse of St. John. This is John chapter 21 and verse 25, which reads, there are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they should be written every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written. Amen. Right? So you want a book about everything that Christ did in the flesh, out of the flesh? The world itself couldn't contain all the things. It's just too much. Right? These are things we'll be learning and continuing being with the things that we're going to continue to learn while in the kingdom. What are laws we put in the inward parts, right? There's still going to be more to learn because the commandments are finite, but the wisdom that can be drawn from them is infinite, right? Think of it as like a great tree. While the trunk and the root is a common base, the branches can branch out towards the heavens continually, right? As long as the soil and the nutrients in the soil continue to feed the tree, it can constantly grow out. So that's how wisdom and knowledge works. That's how families work, right? As that's why they call them family trees, right? So yeah, Judas, following in that spirit of Christ, he did many great works, and it says many things weren't even written down. There were too many things to track. So let's go back to First Maccabees 9, and let's read on in now 23, because that was kind of the first part. I'm going to get into the next part. So verse 23, it says in First Maccabees 9, now at the death of Judas, the wicked began to put forth their heads, all the coast of Israel. And there arose up all such as wrought iniquity. In those days also was there very great famine, by reason whereof the country revolted and went with them. So we've got the heathen, like Psalms 83 tells us, right? Putting their heads together to say, all right, their great leader is fallen, right? Let's figure out now how to take advantage of this downfall of this man, because clearly their courage has to be abated because of this, the Israelites. So let's seize the moment. But it tells you that there was a great famine also in those times as well, right? To cause them to be discomforted, even though they might have had a stronger force. But there was a famine, which made it hard for everybody, not just the army, but even the people, the regular common folk, when it came to their necessity. 25, then Maccabees chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country. And they made inquiry and search for Judas' friends and brought them unto Maccabees, who took advantage of them and used them despitefully, right? So now he grabbed up those that were friends of Judas, right, and captured them and abused them, right? It says, so was there a great affliction in Israel, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen amongst them. So the enemy now has seized this advantage and now is trying to what? Abuse and torture those that were allied unto Judas, right? Now that he's dead. 28, for this cause all Judas's friends came together and said unto Jonathan, since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies, and besides and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. Now therefore we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that thou mayest fight our battles. Right? So now they're looking to and leaning towards his brother Jonathan to now carry up the fight, right? To continue waging war against Maccabees and the other forces that are what? Trying to overthrow us. You want to look at something?
No, I'm just saying, have a sort of closing prayer.
You want to see something on the thing, or you good?
No. I was
okay. So it says in verse 32, but when Maccabees get knowledge thereof, he sought for to slay him, right? So he said, I don't know. We can't let one of his brothers now stand up and give them courage again. Oh no, we can't let this happen. We got to take him out too, right? So that we can make sure that the spirits of Israel don't raise up again and get motivated to fight under Jonathan now. So this is warfare, right? Even though we know we're the righteous, with the heathen, they're going to try to what? Keep the advantage and keep that momentum going, since we are mourning for the loss of Judas. It says, then Jonathan and Simon his brother and all that were with him, perceiving that, fled into the wilderness of Tekoa and pitched their tents by the water of the pool Asphar. which when Maccabees understood, he came near to Jordan with all his hosts upon the Sabbath day. So going right back to tried and true tactics, right? Of trying to wage war against us on the Lord's Sabbath day, the day when what? We'll be resting. But we remember what Judas did during his time before he died. He said, look, they're going to keep attacking us on the Sabbath while we rest. And we see our brothers dying in righteousness, refusing to fight to keep the Lord's Sabbath. They're going to do this all the time against us, if they could, and wipe us out. So we'll see if Jonathan takes that similar counsel as he sees them trying this old tactic of attacking us on our Sabbath. It says, now Jonathan has sent his brother John, a captain of the people, to pray his friends and Nabothhites that they might leave with them their carriage, which was much. But the children of Jambri came out of Medeba. He took John and all that he had and went their way with it. After this came word to Jonathan and Simon his brother that the children of Jambri made great marriage and were bringing the bride from Nadabatha with a great train, as being the daughter of one of the great princes of Canaan. Therefore they remembered John their brother and went up and hid themselves under the covert of the mountain, where they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, there was much ado and great carriage. And the bridegroom came forth and his friends and brethren to meet them with drums and music's instrument and many weapons. Then Jonathan and they that were with them rose up against them from the place where they laid ambush and made a slaughter of them in such sort as many fell down dead, and the remnant fled into the mountain, and they took all their spoils. And so they said, oh, you guys, you heathen want to make us a celebration. All right, we'll make sport of that, right? And gain your spoils. We can build ourselves up. Verse 41. Thus, 1 Maccabees 9 and 41. Thus was the marriage turned into mourning, and the noise of their melody into lamentation. So when they had avenged fully the blood of their brother, they turned again to the marriage of Jordan. Now when Maccabees heard thereof, he came on a Sabbath day unto the banks of Jordan with a great power. Right, so they're in the center part of Jordan. Oh, forgot to show the map. Share this real quick. So I zoomed in a little bit, but let me zoom in some more just in case you guys can see it. Be it right here. This is the region right in the center part of the plot of Judea. This is where Judas Maccabees fell in battle. Well, let me get this in the middle. So right here in the middle here, it tells us right around the time of 160 BC. So right now we're between 160 and 150 BC, leading to these other events. So these things we see over here, these fights here that are in purple, these representing the battles that Jonathan's going to fight next, as you read through the upcoming scriptures. This from the Bible Atlas by Access Foundations. It's available online. And this is what number is this? This is number 92 in the list. So they have atlases going all the way back to Genesis, all the way to Revelation. This is number 92, depicting the history that we're reading right now in the Maccabees. So this isn't just some fantasy book. This is actually a history book, a book of record, right? We have different records here of things that took place. So let's continue on. Make sure I didn't miss that. So let's continue on now. So reading on. All right, good. It says, verse 44, then Jonathan said to his company, let us go up now and fight for our lives, for it standeth not with us today as in times past. So he's reflecting on when they tried to attack him on the Sabbath day before. To not go for that again. To not, just take the knee and try to, run out the clock. No, fight with them on the Sabbath too. And the Most High will be with us, just like he was before with big brother Judas. For behold, the battle is before us and behind us, and the water of Jordan is on this side and on that side. And the marsh likewise and wood, neither is there place for us to turn aside. Right? So even where their positioning was at with the Jordan right there, right? It was hard for them to maneuver when it came to what was behind them. Right? So that's an important part when it comes to battle is what? Understanding terrain, understanding, high ground versus low ground. And if you are fighting a battle, what's in front of you, but also what's on your sides and what's behind you when it comes to maneuvering. It says, wherefore cry you now unto heaven that ye may be delivered from the hand of your enemies. Right? So similar sentiment as Judas, right? When it comes to trusting in the Most High and calling upon him for protection, even against tough odds against the enemy. With that, they joined battle, and Jonathan stretched forth his hand to smite Maccabees, but he turned back from him. And Jonathan and they that were with him leapt into Jordan and swam over unto the farther bank, howbeit the other passed not over Jordan unto them. Right? So they said, all right, we're going to come and see you. So they went over the river. This is kind of interesting because you see, they went through that river no matter, regardless, at least with the during the time of Joshua, the Most High split it open, right? As a miracle. They don't talk about it enough. We always talk about, the Red Sea, of course. They don't talk about the time when the Most High split the Jordan. But Most High didn't split it, but they didn't care. They said, look, we're going for war. We're going after them. Even if it means us going through the water to get them. So reading on in 49. So they were slain of Bacchai's side that day about 1,000 men. After returned Bacchai to Jerusalem and repaired the strong cities in Judea, the fort in Jericho and Emmaus and Beth Horon and Bethel and Thamnatha and Parathoni and Taphan. These did he strengthen with high walls, with gates, and with bars. Right? So he's no idiot. He sees, okay, Jonathan's going to be a problem. Time to not only take the offensive, but also build up our defensive too. He's no slouch. In them, he set a garrison that they might work malice upon Israel. He fortified also the city Bethsura and Gazara in the tower and put forces in them and provision of victuals. So it's like, God, we took these lands back, right? Now, when Judas died, I said they took these lands back and fortified them again. So it's like a lot of back and forth, right? As far as who controls what territory, especially when it comes to these key territories that are Israel's. Moreover, in the 153rd year, in the second month, so now it's still in the springtime, Alchemists commanded that the wall of the inner court of the sanctuary should be pulled down. And he pulled down also the works of the prophets. So here we go again. More of our people that are sellouts, that are supposed to be part of the priesthood, selling out for the Greeks, helping them out, as opposed to helping out Judas, Jonathan, Simon, and their brethren, and all those that are fighting against the Greek captivity. It says, and as he began to pull down, even at that time was Alchemist plagued, and his enterprise hindered, for his mouth was stopped, and he was taken with a palsy, so that he could not no more speak anything nor give order concerning his house. So check that out. Most High smote him with this disease, right? To where he had palsy, right? You go into palsy. It tells you this, right? It usually affects the nervous system, if I'm not mistaken. Remember them talking about this too when Christ was doing different healings. Okay, here we go. I think it's actually, yes. So it's dealing with paralysis, right? It says any, let me share it so you guys can see. Let's see here. Share. I was trying to swap it, but maybe close it and reopen it, but whatever. Dictionary. Oh, here we go. So it says any of the variety of atonal muscular conditions characterized by tremors of the body parts, as the hands, arms, or legs of the entire body, right? So imagine that, the Most High is smiting you with this. But he was up to no good. He's been up to no good. It could have been worse for him, selling out like that. But anyway, let's continue on. So reading on, it says, so Alchemist died at that time with great torment. Now when Maccabees saw that Alchemist was dead, he returned to the king, whereupon the land Judea was in rest 2 years. So no more salt they could use to enforce his will. So he went back to the king to regroup. It says that all the ungodly men held a council, saying, behold, Jonathan and his company are at ease and dwell without care. And therefore we will bring Maccabees hither, we shall take them all in one night. So they came up with a scheme. So they left, but they said, let's come up with a scheme to now take Jonathan by surprise, right? Those was that were sellouts like Alchemist was, right? As we would say today, coons, right? Sambo coons. But the scriptures talk about not being a sellout and not being made merchandise of. But that's a choice that some of us make. It reminds me of a verse these men were reading about here. Let me just read this real quick. So let me get this in the New Testament real quick. As far as a warning, so 2 Peter chapter 2. 2 Peter chapter 2. I'm just going to read 1 to 3 to go with verse 57 and 58. So link this with 9 and 58. So 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1, it reads, so I was writing here in my notes. It says, but there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. So it's the time of Christ, but we see even before that we have some of our people doing this, right? Like we see here with Alchemists and those that follow him on their side, that were buddy with the Greeks. Verse 2, and many shall follow their pernicious ways, or in some side captions you'll see it'll say lascivious, right? Which is like pent up lust, wrongful desire, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. So they're trying to speak evil against Jonathan and those that are following him in righteousness, upholding the fight that Judas was dealing with. And through covetousness, right? So they want what Jonathan has, right? and what he's fought for in righteousness? Shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time slumbereth not, and their damnation, rather, of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not? Right? So they'll try to, with their words, with feigned words, meaning like false words, make merchandise of you, right? To try to sell you out or sell you up the river, right? They have already sold themselves out by degrading themselves before God. Now they want to what? Set you up for destruction. So from then till now, you have that same thing, right? Where you have our people that stand up for righteousness, the remnant of Israel, and then you have those of Israel that what? Whether aware, willing, whether they're aware or unaware of who they are as a people, they'll still what? Sell out to the enemy, to the other nations. Esau being the last one that had us in captivity, whether it was the Greeks back then or the Americans now, or the British, or whoever else. So Peter gives this warning, right? Which is timeless, whether it was before Peter or even after Peter in the times that we're in now. Things written aforetime, written for our learning, right? So back to 1 Maccabees 9. Let's read on at 59. So 1 Maccabees 9 at 59 reads, so they went and consulted with him. Then removed he and came with a great host, and sent letters privily to his adherents in Judea, that they should take Jonathan and those that were with him. Howbeit, they could not, because their counsel was known unto them. So they were able to figure it out. They had somebody on the inside that spread word, and it got back to Jonathan, so that he wasn't taken by surprise. Wherefore they took of the men of the country that were authors of that mischief, about 50 persons, and slew them. So Jonathan wasn't having any of that. He said, you sellouts want to play games? All right, I got a game for you. It's called the game of death, right? Now you're out of here. It says, afterward, Jonathan and Simon, and they there with him, got them away to Bethbasai, which is in the wilderness, and they repaired the decays thereof and made it strong. Which thing, when Bacchides knew, he gathered together all his hosts and sent word to them that were of Judea. Then went he and laid siege against Bethbasai, and they fought against it a long season and made engines of war. Right? So they made another stronghold to hold themselves up, since they had already taken over certain key places that were in Judah. And then once Bacchides found out, he said, okay, let me try to take down this fort so that they can't get strong. Now Jonathan left his brother Simon in the city and went forth himself into the country. With a certain number went he forth. And he smote Odonaicus and his brethren and the children of Phasaron in their tent. And when he began to smite them, he came up with his forces. And when he began to smite them and came up with his forces, Simon and his company went out of the city and burnt up the engines of war. Right? So now we got some tag team action, right? Where we got Jonathan taking the offensive, Simon holding down the defensive of the city. But then it says they destroyed the engines of war that they were using and fought against Bacchides, who was discomfited by them, and they afflicted him sore, for his counsel and his travail was in vain. So this whole attempt to try to get at the sellouts, right, to try to take over Jonathan and Simon, didn't work. Wherefore he was very wroth at the wicked men that gave him counsel to come into the country, insomuch that he slew many of them and purposed to return into his own country. So he said, you sellout Jews, what good are you? You're supposed to give me the inside, the inside track on how to take out Jonathan and Simon. Now I'm doing is a losing position, right? So I'm going to put you to death. So this is the reward of the wicked of our people. It says in 70, whereof when Jonathan had knowledge, he sent ambassadors unto him, to the end he should make peace with him and deliver them the prisoners, which thing he accepted and did according to his demands, and swear unto him that he would never do him harm all the days of his life, right? So waging war, but still there's rules of engagement, right? Where he said, look, we got some of your guys captured. Here's what we'll do, right? Let's sit down, let's parlay. These guys we didn't kill, we got this, that's captured. We'll let them go as long as you stay out of here, right? And don't come back. Now, we see that he's making an agreement, but we know when it comes to Esau's track record, he don't stick to his agreements. But we'll see what happens as we go forward. We'll see if this is the last we've heard of Maccabees. It says, verse 72, when therefore he had restored unto him the prisoners that he had taken aforetime out of the land of Judea, he returned and went his way unto his own land, neither came he any more into their borders. Thus the sword ceased from Israel, but Jonathan dwelt at Maccabees and began to govern the people. He destroyed the ungodly men out of Israel. So we see the Most High dealing with Jonathan, dealing with him and Simon at this point, to give him this victory against this Maccabees, who was what? Trying to take advantage and make all types of mischief, trying to take over the key places in Israel again, namely in the kingdom of Judah. But it didn't work out. And sent Maccabees packing. And he said, yeah, and you guys who were buddy with Maccabees to try to overthrow, me and Simon, my brother, everybody with us, we're going to find you and take you guys out also because you're a problem. We can't let you stay alive, right? Because what's going to happen is ungodly men they're going to lurk and wait for their moment when the Greeks ever come back. Send them a letter and go, we're standing by, just waiting for you to ally yourself under us so that we can take out Jonathan and Simon. So they knew not to even give them that chance. So this is how it works, man. This is warfare. This is what we're dealing with. So now, chapter 10, it says, in 160th year, Alexander, the son of Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, went up. So now we're going into another person in the Greek family, another leader amongst the Greeks. I think you read about him in history. His name is Alexander Balas, Balas, B-A-L-A-S. You look at the history of what's going on here. That's his last name because, Alexander was a popular name. You had many Alexanders. The more notable one being, of course, Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian. But this is Alexander Balas, or B-A-L-A-S. And you look him up. So what's he going to do? He went up and took Ptolemais. The people had received him by means whereof he reigned there, right? So Ptolemais being in that part of Lower Egypt, the north part of Egypt, which is Lower Egypt, because remember the river Nile went from south to north. So the what they called Lower Egypt was in the north side, close where Alexandria was, where the port city was. That was considered Lower Egypt, even though it was in the north. So that's where Ptolemais was situated too. So he took that back, because remember, the Greeks would fight with each other. Because you had the Seleucids, that's who Alexander Balas came from. They fought with each other. You see conflicts back and forth between the Seleucid dynasty and the Ptolemaic dynasty at different times. There's a time when they tried to take back over the Ptolemaic dynasty, which was ruled by the Ptolemies, as opposed to the Seleucid dynasty, who was ruled by Seleucus and those that came after him. Let me read on. Now, when King Demetrius heard thereof, he gathered together an exceeding great host and went forth against him to fight. For Demetrius sent letters to Jonathan with loving words, so as he magnified him. For said he, let us first make peace with him before he join with Alexander against us. So the enemy of my enemy, right? Let's see if I can make him my friend. Since he's there and since he's fortified, let's use him to secure our interests, right? Which the Most High can do when we serve righteousness, right? Whether it be individually or a large group like we see here with the nation itself, the Most High can make certain of the enemies work for our benefit, right? But we really can't exercise that option if we're not serving the Lord with our heart, soul, and mind. So reading on, it says, else he will remember all the evils that we have done against him and against his brethren and his people. So let's at least get on his good side, say he doesn't remember the bad that he did. And now we have two enemies to fight, the Seleucids as well as the Jews. Wherefore he gave him authority to gather together in hosts to provide weapons that he might aid him in battle. He commanded also that the hostages that were in the tower should be delivered him. Then came Jonathan to Jerusalem and read the letters in the audience of all the people and of them that were in the tower, who were sore afraid when they heard that the king had given them authority to gather together in hosts. Right? So they're clearly uneasy, right? Because they said, oh man, we don't want them combining forces with Demetrius. That's going to be a problem for us. Whereupon they of the tower delivered their hostages unto Jonathan. And he delivered them unto their parents. This done, Jonathan settled himself in Jerusalem, began to rebuild and repair the city. So, warfare isn't all just swords and spears and arrows and bows, right? A lot of it is negotiation and leverage, right? Just like business, right? So Jonathan is using everything at his disposal to gain the advantage, even to be a certain heathen nation that is not at odds with us. We can use that as leverage to build ourselves up against another heathen nation that we know is going to be a problem. Then why not do it? The whole key is to what? Stay on principle when it comes to the Most High's commandments in all your doings. That way you won't be blindsided. It says, verse 11, he commanded the workmen to build the walls in the Mount Zion round about with square stones for fortification, and they did so. Then the strangers that were in the fortresses with which Maccabees had built fled away, insomuch as every man left his place and went into his own country. Right? So they headed for the hills. They said, okay, Maccabees is not coming back anytime soon, and we got no help from him now. Now that Jonathan's getting stronger, it's best that we just get out of here. It's best that we just literally head for the hills. Now reading on in verse 13. Oops. Sorry about that. Can you see this? All right, good. Make sure. All right, so reading on, it says, then came verse 14, here we go. Only at Bethsura, certain of those that had forsaken the law and the commandments remained still, for it was their place of refuge. Now when King Alexander had heard what promises Demetrius had sent unto Jonathan, he also, when also it was told him of the battles and noble acts which he and his brethren had done, and the pains that they had endured, he said, shall we find such another man? Now therefore we will make him our friend and our confederate. Upon this he wrote a letter and sent it unto him according to these words, saying, so it's kind of like fight for the alliance, right? They said, look, leave that Demetrius alone. Be friends with us, right? He realized who's stronger, who's in a position like him throughout all the land of Israel, right? So it's best to have this one as an ally. Because remember, that's the best campaign, right? The best campaign in war is to not have to go to war at all. You can just get a country to pretty much come into league with you, right? That's the best campaign because it's not costly. All you do is gain for you and for the group that you make your ally or that you annex, right? Where when you go into annexation, that's like where it's not so much in a partnership. It's more like you just belong to them at this point. But at least it works for the other people, where you don't have to worry about losing any men, women, or children or resources.
Join NATO, right?
Yeah, as an example, right? And an alliance. I don't think they'll use a strong word as annexation for something like NATO, but looking at it from an economic standpoint and a trade perspective, you probably could make that argument. As far as the leeway or lack thereof that the countries had that are part of that alliance. So power has always been power, whether it was back then or now, right? People, resources, land, water, money, right? It's always been that. It's always been that, and whoever controls that is the one who's in charge. That's the one that has dominion.
Yeah, but what about the people?
That's what I said. That's what I said. I said people, land, water.
No, but I'm saying if the leaders want to join, people that don't have a say.
Well, it depends on the style of government. Maybe it's an oligarchy, a small committee decides. He sits down with his court or his counselors, the ruler, and they decide whether or not to go with it or not. So it depends on the type of government that those people are governing themselves by. But all in all, that's the way to answer that question, whether it was then or now, right? You look at those things. Money, the things that money can buy, which are resources, plants, animals, minerals, the place where those things come from, which is land and water, which includes rivers and ports. And above that, you have the people that reside on those lands and at those ports. People power, human resources, which is your workforce, as well as your army, if you have an army. So whoever controls that, that's the one that's in charge.
Sometimes you have like break off groups,
Mm-hmm.
Like there's carries and stuff like that. And they want to think about old days, we want battles and stuff like that. We're going to break off on the main land,
Right. That's going into what? During the time of Christ, right? After Christ. That history. And we see it right here during this time with these sellout Jews trying to partner up with the Greeks. Right? They're a break-off group too. And there's a break-off group of sellouts. So First Maccabees chapter 10. Let's get this letter now. King Alexander to his brother Jonathan sending greetings. So you see, you got the nice salutation. Jonathan, my brother, right? And we see that today, right? We got dealing with a heathen, right? And we know we're not the same. But the time the heathen wants something and wants us to, wants to gain from what we have, right? Want to sit down with us, everything is all nice and there's all types of pleasantries. Ah, yes, my brother from another mother. Give me a hug. Yes. Sit. Let's talk. Let's parlay. Bring him the best wine. Bring him the best, whatever we have, right? So he can win favors, so he can get that agreement to, whatever they're trying to get from you and vice versa, right? So the trade can go well, so the negotiation can go smoothly. Because, like I said, he doesn't want Jonathan as an enemy because he's seen him buddy up with Demetrius. He's like, nah, I'm gonna win him over to my side, right? But let's see the letter.
Yeah, the revolution, even jobs,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to feed my family,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not down with this thing again, I got to eat, man.
Right.
And I have to eat good too.
Got me thinking about was that Panther, the movie about the Black Panthers that came out in the 90s? You had that guy that was he was like, because set in Oakland, that's where the Black Panther movement really kicked off initially, Oakland, California, and you had the guy that was I think he was like a drug dealer or something. He said, "Yo, what are you doing, man? These are Panther streets. What are you out here, selling drugs?" He was like, "Man, the hell with Black Power. I'm down with Green Power." Man, he yoked him up like, "Man, get him out of here." So yeah, you have folks that have that outlook. It's just like, what are you doing, bro? We're thinking long-term solutions here, man. He's out here selling drugs. Man, get this guy.
Yeah, one more. Read this. Daniel chapter 1, verse 3. And the king spake unto Aspenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and as such has had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
Right. So, Khan, so why'd you read this?
And can I read verse 5?
No, that's no problem. Just saying,
Yeah,
why,
so
why are we reading this?
So it's like he wants to have peace. He wants to, let us come together in this unity. Right? So that's what he's doing right now.
Okay.
So here they bring in, choice, man, let us sit down and have, meat and drink, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean it's similar, but I would say Daniel's more of a takeover. Like, yeah, that's more of a takeover as opposed to this. We're more so sitting down as like equals. You know, you have something, I have something. Daniel's more like, we own you, and we're gonna take the best and brightest of you. It's more of an annexation. Like, we're gonna take you and make you a part of us.
Yeah.
Now, I say the Greeks wouldn't try to do that again. Of course they would. But now we're going to see how Alexander plays this out. Alexander Balas. We have heard of thee that thou art a man of great power, and meet to be our friend. Right? So, wouldn't it be nice, because I was like, yeah, you're right to be our friend. Like, great for you to be friends with us. So they're trying to flatter, but at the same time, big themselves up. Wherefore now this day we ordain thee to be the high priest of thy nation, to be called the king's friend. And therewithal he sent him a purple robe and a crown of gold, and required thee to take our part and keep friendship with us. So change of approach. Before we were dealing with these sellouts, that didn't work out, right? They got overthrown. So let's you can't beat them, join them, right? Or you can't beat them, try to get them to join us. Let's deal with Jonathan. Let's get him on our good side, right? Let's make him a high priest. He wants to deal with his laws. Okay, cool. As long as it means we can keep that alliance and have that leverage against Demetrius, we'll go that route with this. It says, so in the 7th month of the 160th year, at the Feast of Tabernacles, so now we're in the fall, Jonathan put on the holy robe and gathered together forces and provided much armor. You see that? So now he's been now appointed the high priest, or allowed to be the high priest, just showing that, he is leaning more towards a negotiation where you had two countries sitting down. But we see that the Greeks are still the dominant empire, hence them having a say or having a certain level of influence when it comes to who can be the high priest. But all in all, it's ultimately the Most High that's allowing it, because we know Jonathan is righteous, just like his brothers are righteous, and they come out of Joarib, so they have rightful claim to the high priesthood by birthright anyway, and they're righteous on top of it. So it says, whereof when Demetrius heard, he was very sorry, and said, what have we done that Alexander had prevented us in making enmity with the Jews to strengthen himself? So he's like, oh man, he won him over. Man, we dropped the ball. We got to get him back to us. He says, I will write unto them words of encouragement and promise them dignities and gifts, that I may have their aid. So it's almost like two girls fighting over a guy, or two guys fighting over a girl, right? Like you see, these middle school, high school dramas, right? They say, no, he's my friend. No, he's my friend. No, that's my man. That's my man. That's my woman. No, it's my woman. So they're competing for Jonathan's affections, his alliance, really, against the other. It says in verse 26, whereas you have kept covenants with us and continued in our friendship, not joining yourselves with our enemies. We have heard thereof and are glad. Wherefore now continue you still to be faithful unto us, and we will well recompense you for the things you do in our behalf, and will grant you many immunities and give you rewards. And now I do free you, and for your sake I release all the Jews from tributes and from the customs of salt and from crown taxes. We're talking about the customs of salt. Remember, salt was used by the Romans as a means of currency. Right when you go into salt, that's where you get that word salary, right? Today you talk about, you got a 5-digit salary, a 6-digit salary, right? But that word salary comes from, I think it's the Latin, which just means salt. So that's where that ties back to, because once again, salt was used as a means of currency when you go into it, at least at that time. You go into the etymology of the word.
Reminds you after you work, you get a bag of salt.
Yeah, no, you feel salty, right?
Preserves food.
Mm-hmm. It does many things, right? Here's just in case you don't believe us, check this out. Oh crap! Gotta go back down again. Here we go. It says here, fixed regular payment made by an employer, often monthly, for professional or office work, as opposed to manual work. Compare a wage. That's how it's used now. But then you go down here, word origin for salary, from the Anglo-Norman salary, from the Latin salarium, the sum given to Roman soldiers to buy salt, from sal, salt. So there it is. Okay, so now continuing on.
Beans.
They have the gold and the silver and the precious metal.
You can't eat the rough time come around and you can't eat the gold. Like
Give me that bean counter, right? So first Maccabees 10. So we see Demetrius is going all out, right? He said, nah, man, the heck with Alexander. I want you on my side. So I'm going to release you from tributes, customs of salt, and from crown taxes, verse 30. And from that which appertaineth unto me to receive for the third part of the seed and half of the fruit of the trees, I release it from this day forth, so that they shall not be taken of the land of Judea, nor of the 3 governments which are added there unto out of the country of Samaria and Galilee, from this day forth forevermore. So we see this Galilee, Samaria, and then you have Judah at the bottom, which would, according to the Romans, be called Judea. That's kind of the precursor to what we will see during the time of the Gospels. We have those 3 significant regions, right? Samaria, Galilee, and Judea in the south. Let Jerusalem also be holy and free, with the borders thereof, both from tenths and tributes. So acknowledging our custom of the tenth of the tithe. And as for the tower which is at Jerusalem, I yield up my authority over it. And give it to the high priest. He may set in it such men as he shall choose to keep it. Right? So he's pulling out all stops, right? To show Jonathan, the high priest, I got a better deal than that Alexander Balas and those Greeks. He says, moreover, I freely set at liberty every one of the Jews they were carried captive out of the land of Judea into any part of my kingdom, and I will that all my officers remit the tributes, even of their cattle. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and Sabbaths and the new moons and the solemn days and the 3 days before the feast and the 3 days after the feast shall all be days of immunity and freedom for all the Jews in my realm. Right? So the preparation time and even the time to enjoy after the feast is over, right? All those things and all the costs associated with that you will pay, I'm going to relieve it. It says, where am I at?
We have this
30, 35? So what?
I said, can we have this in, nowadays?
Yeah, exactly.
They give us this now. Oh, yeah, really? And pay too?
If we get enough critical mass, we actually have something to leverage, then probably get Esau at the table because he's a greedy so he's got to look out for the sabotage because it's coming. Was it Malcolm said that thing? He said, "You only understand two things. They only understand two things: money or blood. If you're not hitting one way or the other, they're not listening." Now that's of course without the Most High. Now with the Most High, yeah, got more options. It says, verse 36, I will further that there be enrolled amongst the king's forces about 30,000 men of the Jews, unto whom pay shall be given, as belongeth to all the king's forces. And of them shall be, I can't read. And of them some shall be placed in the king's stronghold, of whom also some shall be set over the affairs of the kingdom, which are of trust. And I will that their overseers and their governors be of themselves, and that they live after their own laws, even as the king have commanded in the land of Judea, which is, Judah, just a Latin spelling of it. And concerning the three governments that are added to Judea from the country of Samaria, let them be joined with Judah, that they may be reckoned to be under one, nor bound to obey other authority than the high priests. Like I say, he's pointing out all stops because that's how it was supposed to be from the beginning, right before the split. And other nations came in to carve up the northern kingdom. As for Ptolemaeus, in a land pertaining thereto, right, going into Egypt, I give it as a free gift to the sanctuary at Jerusalem for the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. Moreover, I give every year 15,000 shekels of silver out of the king's accounts from the places appertaining, and all the overplus which the officers paid, not as in former time, from henceforth shall be given towards the works of the temple. So not only the northern part of Egypt or lower Egypt and all the resources there, but now even to build up the temple, which he knows is what? Near and dear to us, near and dear to the high priests and what they got going on, and the other priests. And besides this, the 5,000 shekels of silver, which they took from the uses of the temple out of the accounts year by year, even those things shall be released, because they appertain to the priests that minister or that serve. And whosoever they be that flee into the temple at Jerusalem, or be within the liberties thereof, being indebted unto the king, or for any other matter, let them be at liberty, and all that they have in my realm. Right? So he's doing his own release. Like we have a year release, right? Where they say, okay, every 7th year, any debt that you owe your brother, it'll be relieved to you. So he's, like I say, he's pulling out all stops, and he's trying to talk. He's talking our language as Jews, right? Showing favor towards us. For the building also, in repairing of the works of the sanctuary, expenses shall be given of the king's accounts. Yeah, and for the building of the walls of Jerusalem, and the fortifying thereof round about, expenses shall be given out of the king's accounts, as also for building of the walls in Judea. So that's a pretty tall order, man. So Demetrius, he's not playing. So let's see what Jonathan says does in response to this.
Where all this money coming?
Hey, clearly he's got it, right?
Yeah, man.
He's got it somehow, right? If not, he's gonna make it good because clearly he doesn't want this Alexander Balas as a threat. So he said, "Let me make his enemy my friend and keep him as my friend. I don't want him to become his friend."
Because like here, they take all that stuff from us and all the taxes and all that stuff, and then they give us like a little program, like snippets of programs and stuff like that. It's like what certain little programs they give us.
Mm-hmm.
They call it. This is something they call it a little welfare and stuff like that. After they take the big share
Mm-hmm.
of what every taxes and all that stuff, then they get a little snippets here.
It's kind of a carnal example, but it kind of makes you think too of like anytime you see Esau really trying to be helpful, it makes you think of like in athletics, sports. You have like a top like high school player or a college player. You got all the colleges, all the pro teams, meeting up with the athlete, like, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Oh man, you had a great season last season. Oh man, it was what a performance. So here's what we got. If you coming to our school, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, and then they sit down with the other school. They had a movie about that too, the Spike Lee movie, the He Got Game. Remember He Got Game? Where you had Ray Allen, the actual basketball player, but he was playing Jesus. I forget his last name. What was his last name? Right. And every time you see him like winning games, they always said the headlines in the newspaper, Jesus saves.
Really?
You remember that movie? Remember his dad was Denzel Washington? He was like locked up, but then he would like, they show him like meeting up, playing ball with each other. He's kind of like teaching them as they're playing ball and stuff. Like, telling them what to expect. It's that and the third. But yeah, but I'm just using that movie just as an example, but it kind of makes you think of that when Esau pull out all stops, but for their sake, for us, because they want you to come to their college, they want you to come to their team, because they said, yeah, we'll give them all this, but we're gonna make hand over fist for ticket sales, jerseys, TV spots, we're gonna clean up, But now take that in context, right? Like I said, it's a carnal example, but take this in context because this isn't a strange thing, given that Jonathan is standing up for righteousness and building up his people. It's easy for the Most High to make the heathen. Yeah, they come for their own gain. The Most High can remote control them easy, right? To just build us up anyway, even at their own expense. It's not a hard thing for the Most High to do. So don't forget that. And, we quote it all the time, but let's read it again before we read on in verse 46. This is Jeremiah 15 and 11. So let's always be reminded of this. Before we go, oh, see, look, all the heathen aren't bad. See, look, even in history, see, he's a heathen, but look how nice he is. See, they can be saved too. They can be saved. What were you saying? they can be saved. It's funny you mentioned that. I got something to tell you after we finish. So Jeremiah 15 and 11, right? It reads, the Lord Yahweh said, verily or truly it shall be well with thy remnant. Meaning those of us that no matter what time period seek the Most High. Because from then till now, you have the nation fall as a whole. But you always said the remnant of Israel, every time period, that seeks after the Lord and tries to get it right so that we won't go back into captivity. Even the majority of us will turn our backs on God and deal with the idols of the nations. It says, it shall be well with thy remnant, Verily, I will cause the enemy to entreat thee well in the time of evil and in the time of affliction. See that? So that's what's going on here with Demetrius and Alexander Belus. But now back to First Maccabees 10. Let's read on in 46. Just take that down real quick. So once again, link it with 45, I guess. Jeremiah 15:11. So verse 46 in First Maccabees 10. Now when Jonathan and the people heard these words, they gave no credit to them, nor received them, because they remembered the great evil that he had done in Israel, for he had afflicted them very sore. So like we read above, Demetrius was anticipating that, right? That's why he said, damn, let me try to get on his good side before he's reminded of all the horrible things that we did in times past. So, you know, they didn't forget. So they're taking that into account. Both Alexander, they were well pleased because he was the first that entreated of peace with them. And they were confederate with him always. So it looks like first come, first serve, right? Sorry, guys, nice try, Demetrius, but Alexander Balas, he kind of beat you to the punch. So looks like we're going this way. It says, then gathered together King Alexander great forces and camped over against Demetrius. After the two kings had joined battle, Demetrius' host fled, but Alexander followed after him and prevailed against them. And he continued the battle very sore until the sun went down, and that day was Demetrius slain. Afterward, Alexander sent ambassadors to Ptolemy, king of Egypt, with a message to this effect. So he tried, but didn't work out. And then Alexander said, okay, now it's time to eliminate the competition for Jonathan and his alliance. So now he's writing a letter to Ptolemies now that are in Egypt. So remember, he comes from the Seleucids. For as much as I am come again to my realm and set in the throne of my progenitors, and have gotten the dominion and overthrown Demetrius and recovered our country, for after I had joined battle with him, both he and his host were discomfited by us, so that we sit in the throne of his kingdom. Now therefore let us make a league of amity together, and give me now thy daughter to wife, and I will be thy son-in-law, and will give both thee and her gifts according to thy dignity. Right, so now he said, okay, look, let's try to make peace with each other, right? Let's not try to fight with each other like we've done before. We had this before, right? Remember, go back to First Maccabees, the first chapter, where you had the Seleucid dynasty going against the Ptolemaic dynasty. So after this victory against Demetrius, getting him out of there, he said, okay, look, let me try to at least score some points or score some kind of peace and allow the Ptolemies to be. And they can hold down that portion because remember, Israel's right in between them. Because the Seleucids are like northeast of Israel, but then the Ptolemies are southwest of Israel. Let's see what Ptolemy says in response. And Ptolemy the king gave answer and saying, happy be the day wherein thou didst return into the land of thy fathers and sat in the throne of their kingdom. And now will I do to thee as thou hast written. Meet me therefore at Ptolemais, that we may see one another. For I will marry my daughter to thee according to thy desire. So he agreed to his terms and his amity. It says, so Ptolemy went out of Egypt with his daughter Cleopatra, and they came unto Ptolemais in the 162nd year. Now, keep in mind, see, raise your hand. You go into the lineage, you go into, even Wikipedia has these records. You go into, any encyclopedia, you have more than one Ptolemy, just like you have more than one Antiochus, just like you have more than one Demetrius. You go into the Cleopatras, there were at least what I want to say 15 or 16 of them. You go back into their lineage. We always talk about you got Yul Brynner supposed to be Pharaoh. That's whiteface. Or you talk about Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra in the movie, right? But she may not look like that per se, but her being an Edomite, that's not too far off because you go into it, the Ptolemies and the Cleopatras, right? They married into to the Mizraim at certain points, but it was mostly Esau. So majority of the Cleopatras were actually Edomites. That's why I say even Elizabeth Taylor being classed as Cleopatra, the head of Egypt. That's not too far off. When you get into that, Cleopatra was much later. After this time, which was like I think the 15th or the 16th. I think that's the one Liz Taylor's supposed to be playing. The one who's talking to was it Mark Antony, the Roman guy. So there was a bunch of Cleopatras. You have to specify. Just like Ptolemies, you have different Ptolemies throughout throughout the generations. You look at that chart. You see, this one begat this one begat this one begat this one. What were you saying?
Oh, so it's like the woman have no say. It's like, oh, here's my daughter. Yeah, take her. Don't like, oh, do you want to go with him? Whatever. How are your feelings? What do you think? And so, yeah, here's my daughter. Take her.
Mm-hmm.
A modern day woman now. So she has no say.
Right. And you had pushback even during those ancient times too, during the time of the Greeks and the Romans too, where they were more liberal, as you say, right? Where women had more agency. That's not a new thing. You had that in the Greco-Roman time as well. But then, mm-hmm. So you have more agency with the women during this time, and it increased even more during the time of the Romans, which is coming up. You do the history. But reading on in verse 58, it says, when King Alexander meeting him gave unto him his daughter Cleopatra, and celebrated her marriage at Ptolemais, which is the city, their chief city, with great glory, as the manner of kings is. Now King Alexander had written unto Jonathan that he should come and meet him, right? So it's a festive time, right? He's made this alliance with the Ptolemaic dynasty. So he says, "Oh, Jonathan, come. Let's sit down and break bread too." But what about? Let's see. Who thereupon went honorably to Ptolemais, where he met the two kings and gave them their friends silver and gold and many presents, and found favor in their sight. At that time, certain pestilent fellows of Israel, men of a wicked life, here we go again. Here come the sellouts, right? You can never get rid of all of them, right? You saw that he was beginning to do this, Jonathan. But you still got some left over, right? That are in the cut, waiting to mess things up. Men of a wicked life assembled themselves against him to accuse him. But the king would not hear them. Yeah, moreover than that, the king commanded to take off his garments and clothe them in purple, and they did so. So, what's the it makes you think of a little bit in the Gospels when they're crucifying Christ, and then they put the was it INRI, INRI above them. They always see that when they show the Caesar Borgia paintings. And the INRI is actually accurate, right? Because they put an inscription above them, right? Which said "King of the Jews," and then you had the high priest and the other Pharisees. They were like, no, change it to "He said he's King of the Jews," and then Pontius was like, "I wrote what I wrote." Remember? Right. So it's like, no, I put King of the Jews, so we're going to keep it like that.
One more thing. Okay, you can imagine all the kind of, type of food are there. All kind of, you got clean food, you got unclean food, all that stuff there, It's like, oh man.
Oh yeah. Yuck. Also, he made him sit by himself and said to his princes, "Go with him into the midst of the city and make proclamation that no man complain against him of any matter, that no man trouble him for any matter of cause." So, oh man, the sellout Jews, they were heated at this. They got orders from the head of the Greeks, the ruler of the Greeks, that they want to kiss their behind so much, to be nice to Jonathan, who they hate so much, right? Being a righteous man, you got the Mosai guy Alexander showing him favor. So that they got the sellouts real heated. So it says, now when his accusers saw that he was honored according to the proclamation, and clothed in purple, they fled all away. Right, so like they ran home like a like a sad boy, right, who got his lunch money taken. It's like, back her off, right, run home. Nice try. So the king honored him and wrote him amongst his chief friends and made him a duke and a partaker of his dominion. It's funny to use the word duke, because anytime you see a duke as a title in the scriptures, you see it definitely being something that pertains to Esau, right? You went to Genesis 36, right?
Yeah.
The heads of the Edomites, they gave them the title of duke. That's what a joke we always make. That's what we call Esau. We call them the Dukes of Hazzard. That's what I'm saying. That's the joke we make, based on that show, right? We say, we go to Genesis 36. We see these were his dukes. Like, I'll get it real quick. So this is Genesis 36. Genesis 36, I'm just going to read 19, but you go throughout the chapter. It goes into their family line and notable men that came out of Edom as far as their empire. That's why it said the Bible's focused on us. Everybody's in here. Everybody's origin. That's on the planet Earth now. You can find your ancestry in the scriptures, as well as your burden or your judgment you got to face for what you did before. You were here before in your past life. And you are reaping what you did before in your ancestry. So it says in Genesis 36 and 19, these are the sons of Esau, who is Edom, and these are their dukes. As you read down, it goes into their dukes. You read above, it goes into their dukes also, but I just want to read that verse where it pretty much uses that word. So let's go back. Let's continue on. I always like to read verse 8 too. Anytime you mention Esau, Edom, if you want to go through Genesis 25 and then go through that whole breakdown, you just read verse 8. We can see before they were associated with the Caucasus Mountains, they were associated with Mount Seir. You take them to that verse. It says, "Thus dwelt Esau Mount Seir." Esau is Edom. It's right there, let you know. Esau is Edom. So they're the same people. And you'll see it in the scriptures as Idumea, or Idumea. That's just a Latin rendering for Edom. Right? And they call themselves Idumea, right? You go into the archaeology, when you look at the Herods that ruled in Israel, they referred to them as Idumeans. They were Romans. See? So East tries to separate and say, "Oh, that was back then. Now we're this, now we're that." But the scriptures will pretty much show that ancestry better than any DNA registry website they have out here now that just goes into phenotypes. You this percent this percent that, right? It doesn't matter as much as your father's side and the line of the seed that came before you. That's what makes your nationality. So that's a timeless wisdom that we consider milk, but we damn it to teach it every time we go out and teach, because through nationality, it breaks down so many other things when it comes to inheritance, when it comes to rise and fall of nations. So many things are tied right back to that milk topic of nationality. Unless you understand that, so many things are going to be confusing to you, right? So back in First Maccabees, chapter 10. Verse 66, afterward Jonathan returned to Jerusalem with peace and gladness. Furthermore, in the 135th year, came Demetrius, the son of Demetrius, out of Crete into the land of his fathers. Right? So once again, as I was saying earlier, more than one Demetrius too. Whereof King Alexander heard tell, he was right sorry and returned into Antioch. Right? So Demetrius, his line isn't done yet, right? He may have beat him in battle, but now he is a son to rise up on his behalf. So as he returned into Antioch, which is another chief city of the Greeks, which later on will become a chief city of the Romans, right? He had three main cities that were dominant in the Roman Empire. It's kind of funny. Two out of those three were formerly Greek cities. One of them being Rome, of course, the capital. Then you had Alexandria, which was a Greek capital city in the Ptolemaic dynasty. That became taken over and became part of Rome. And the third is Antioch, which was ruled by the Seleucid dynasty, named after Antiochus himself, right? But then later on, it will be a big city under the Roman Empire, the city of Antioch. You read in the Acts of the Apostles, there was you had the disciples going to Antioch to teach. But yeah, you go into the origin of that Antioch, goes back to the same, named after that same Antiochus, who was the powerful dynasties of the Seleucids. So you do the name origin on a lot of the stuff, you see where it goes back to. And you figure out, okay, here's who had this land before, or here's who had this city before, based on the name. Anyway, let me continue on in verse 69.
This is Titus 1 and 12.
Yeah, same place.
These preaching here are either Esau or us.
Esau.
In Titus 1 and 12.
This is actually in the Zondervan. I looked this up a couple years ago. I just can't remember now. But I think it's under, if you look up poets in the Zondervan, I think it goes into who this is that Paul's making a reference to. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's in there. It makes mention of him. I'm not sure if it goes into his nationality per se, but it makes mention of Paul makes mention of like scholars and prophets of those times. Anytime he uses it to make a point, that goes right back to the scriptures. Like we always talk about broken clock being right 2 times a day when it comes to the other nations and their doctrines. We'll give them credit where credit is due. Anytime they might say or do something that supports the scriptures, we still say they're in the world, but this thing they say right here, this thing they did here, is actually on point based on the scriptures. So we can acknowledge that. So Paul did that too for the people back then. He's referring to a certain a playwright or a poet that was popular during that time when he says one of themselves, even a prophet of their own. Goes into why he's making that reference. But I think in the end, for the context, it really doesn't matter. It's just going into what he said. That they're always liars, slow bellies. That's the point that he's making. Were we scattered all over? Yeah, sure. Were we amongst them? Yeah, sure. Because isn't that where Titus was from? or he left him in there. Paul left him in Crete, at least, if he wasn't from there, to teach in Crete, which means we had to have folks that were scattered there. But the context of the verse is more so focusing on the part of the doctrine they were teaching, which actually aligned with scriptures. That's why Paul was making that reference. But not to go, on a tangent. But yeah, if you look up, I think, poet in the Zondervan, it'll give you more background information on him and some other references that Paul made. But back in the first Maccabees, chapter 10, it says in verse 69, and Demetrius made Apollonius, the governor of Celesyria, his general, who gathered together a great host, encamped in Jamnia, and sent unto Jonathan the high priest, saying, right? So once again, we got them coming back. Those that are part of the Demetrius who died, right? So they're going to see if they can win Jonathan over again, even though Demetrius made an attempt. So let's see what their proposal is. Verse 70, thou alone lift us up thyself against us, and I am laughed to scorn for thy sake. And if somebody wants, you can grab the Zondervan. If you don't want to read it, I can read it, but I just need a copy of it. I just can't leave it, the podium. If you want to grab the Zondervan for me, I could look that up if you want before we close out. It says, verse 70, thou alone liftest up thyself against us, and I am laughed to scorn for thy sake, and reproached. And why doest thou vaunt thy power against us in the mountains? Now therefore, if thou trusteth in thine own strength, come down to us into the plain field, and let us try the matter together. For with thee is the power, for with me is the power of the cities. Ask and learn who I am, and the rest that take our part, and they shall tell thee that thy foot is not able to stand before our face, for thy fathers have been twice put to flight in their own land. Wherefore now thou shalt not be able to abide the horsemen, in so great a power in the plain, where is neither stone nor flint, nor place to flee unto. So so much for trying again. He actually switched. He actually flipped the script. He's not coming so nicely. As opposed to Demetrius saying, hey, look, we'll do this, that, and the third. Apollonius is like, who do you think you are? You think you got Alexander on your side, but you come meet us in the battle, we'll take you out. You ain't as big and bad as you think you are. So he's kind of incendiary, right? What they say, like when you start a fire, he's kind of, talking big man talk to Jonathan here, right? Saying, yeah, come and meet us in the field. Let's see what happens.
Is this supposed to be a battle?
Wait, he's pretty much he's like challenging him, as opposed to like trying to make peace like Demetrius before him was. Ooh. So let's see. Let's see how Jonathan responds, right, to this.
Wow.
But that's how it works. We see that back in the Samuels and the Kings, right? What's the one with I think it was David, right? He had an alliance with I think it was I forget the name of the king. He was a king of Ammon. He had a good relations with him, but then it was his son. I think his name was Harun. I forget the dad's name, but he wrote to Harun, his son, saying, "Yo, you and our dad had a good relationship. We were in league, so let's continue that league." And Harun was like, "I'm not my father, pretty much, and the hell with you." That's we had a scenario where we read it. I think we're going to read it. We're going to read it again in the Sabbath service. We read it before we went through Samuel's, where he sent David's messengers. He took them and shaved off half their beard and half their hair, and then sent them away. David said, "Okay, look, you just stay in the city till it grows back. I'm gonna take care of this." So you don't have to walk out there. It's like, it's with Israel. You get a bad haircut, right? Somebody does your hair funny. You go to school the next day, Israel. Whoa! Yo, look, what's up with his mitt? Look at his mitt. Who cut your hair? Who gnawed at your head? You know, you gonna get roasted. What's the what's the oh god, it's something that happened. I'm trying to think what it was. But you see that sometimes, right, on social media, right? Where you got kids that act up and their parents is like discipline. Sometimes they're showing, testing that behind them. Other times they'll show them, you want to do this, you want to sell drugs, you want to do this. All right, now you're gonna go to school like that, and you show them like, you see the kid, you see the boy, he's just like, Dad, come on, Dad, come on. He's like, nah, you want to be Mr. Big and Bad? Now you're going to school like this, and you see his hair like all patched up. I'm like, damn. I understand discipline, but there's discipline and there's humiliation. Is there another way? Or maybe that's the only way. Who knows? But yeah, when I see those things on social media where it's like, Dad, your pop's gotten your behind. Woo! Or your mom, gotten your behind. Damn. That made me think about that when we read that story about what Harun, the prince of Moab, the prince of Ammon, did to our messengers. So I just think of that example because, like we see here, sometimes the person that came before you isn't as friendly as the person that comes after. Like with Joseph. Remember, it tells you in Exodus, a new Pharaoh rose up that knew not Joseph. And the new Pharaoh is like, oh man, and like we deal with this. So if we work on a job, you got a manager that you love, right? Oh man, this manager's great, and they're great when it comes to time off and lunch breaks. As long as we get our job done, they don't micromanage us. And that manager, gets promoted or goes somewhere else, and they bring in a new manager who, he or she has to make a name for themselves. They're gonna be extra strict a lot of times, right? They probably will micromanage, and then the people that are still on the team or in the group, they're sending emails to the old manager like, where are you working at now? I'm trying to go where you're at. I'm trying to follow you. Because this new manager is the worst. He's cracking the whip.
Something. You're in slavery to where like overseers.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of maybe treat us good. So, to a certain point.
Right.
Some of them are so horrible that we had to run away. Man.
Yeah, exactly. It was all captivity, but you said, you had to kind of weigh it in the balance. Some slave masters weren't as brutal as others, but it was still captivity.
You said, see that, go ahead, make your bricks. We won't give you any straws. Mm-hmm. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm. I think we were talking about that in the class a couple months ago. We're going into that as far as like the equivalent to that today is like you get promoted to a new position, right? Whether it be in a company or in a government, and then they give you little to no resource to do your job as far as your team. The organization used to use 8 or 9 people to work that department. Now you only got 3 people. But like you should be happy that we promoted you. But now we want you to get the job that took 10 people. We want you to get the same results with 3. And it's just like, really? Something's got to give. What's that thing called? What's it called? The project triangle? It's like three points on a triangle, right? Time, cost, and I always forget the third one. Scope. So it's like the scope is, okay, this is the work we plan to do. If you try to add to the scope, it's going to add to the time it's going to take either, or the cost is going to take if you still want to get that same amount of work done. You can't break that triangle. So that's what they call scope creep. They say
scope of work.
Right, exactly. Statement of work, which deals with the scope of what you're trying to get done. And scope creep is where you agree to one set of work, and then management keeps adding on little bits. Oh, add this feature. Oh, add this little thing too. Oh, do this. And it's like, you want the deadline to be next Wednesday, but you keep adding on stuff. We can't finish by next Wednesday if you keep adding on to what we plan to do.
That's the same thing with real estate. You're doing rehab. Scope of work.
Okay.
Right? So scope of work, if you lay it out, you break it down by section, kitchen, bathroom, flooring, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's a price.
Mm-hmm.
There's a financial cost to all that. There's a time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So this was good time, this time, that time. So you have to say that over time.
Right.
So it's going to work.
Con. And it's funny because they say that's where project management started with construction. That was like the first industry that really tapped into it. Now you find project management, IT, finance. They use it everywhere. But like they kind of say the place where it started was with construction.
Yeah, let me just read the scripture. Exodus 5:18.
What's this link with?
Yeah, saying, like the overseers, stuff like that. What we talking about?
Okay, with Apollonius.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Exodus 5:18. It said, "Go therefore now and work, for there shall no straw be given you, yet shall ye deliver the tally of bricks." So we got more to do at the same time.
Exactly.
Oh,
And I don't have the tools I need to get to do my job. And that's one way you could say Esau is a spiritual Egypt because they're good for that. I want you to do the job, but then give you a part or a portion of the resource that to actually do your job and do it well, but still want it done pristine. It's just like something's got to give. You're gonna have to pay me more, or we're going to move the date because it's going to take you more time. Or you don't want me to do it, you have to hire somebody else. You want the same time frame, you're going to need increase your cost, hire another person or two people to get this done if you want it done by the same time period.
can imagine during the pandemic when they had short staff and people were, sick and out and all of that stuff, and people are demanding all this stuff, work to be done. It's like it still has to be going. I mean, one time Tom Cruise was in a movie set and people were like, and he was like yelling and screaming at people, to get the work done.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Oh.
He was doing the pandemic too.
Oh, okay. You're saying like on a movie production during the pandemic?
It's like people, the coronavirus was like hitting people left, right, and center.
Yeah.
It's like yelling at people that keep working.
Mm-hmm. So let me read this real quick and then we'll continue on. Just want to make sure we finish here. Let me just get this real quick. So this is this example I was talking about earlier. Sorry, 1 second here. So this is 2 Samuel. Abner, God's direction. Where is that? Chapter 6? No. Chapter 8. Let's try chapter 9. Here we go. Got it. Not Harun, it was Hanun. That was his name. And his father's name was Nahash. Us dealing with the Japanese back then, right? So this is 2 Samuel's 10:1, just to show how when it comes to someone you're dealing with in business or when it comes to government negotiations, contracts, the person that comes afterward, whether it's the son or the successor, whoever it may not be or have the same, you might not have the same rapport with them as you do with the one that came before, unfortunately. Sometimes you do, you hope. And they say, oh, I hear good things about what my manager told me working with you before, so let's continue that friendship. That's what you hope for. But other times it doesn't happen that way. It's just like, well, listen, ask him. I'm me, and this is what I'm about. So, oh boy, here we go. So let me just read this real quick before you.
What you reading now?
Oh, 2 Samuel 10. Let me start from verse 1. Just as another example of what we're talking about. to link with this Apollonian situation. Yeah, and in verse 1, and we'll read down to about 5. That gets the whole story. So it says, and it came to pass after this that the king of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun, his son, reigned in his stead. We're going to read this in the Sabbath service too in the future. We're still in 1 Samuel, but we'll get here. So we'll get to go through this again. Then said David, I will show kindness unto Hanun, the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness unto me. Right? So only makes sense, right? Yeah, your father is good people's, right? So if you're anything like your pops, I'm sure you'll be too. But let's see if that's the case with this one, right? It says, and David said to comfort, and David sent to comfort him by the hand of his servants for his father. And David's servants came into the land of the children of Ammon, or the so-called Japanese. And the princes of the children of Ammon said unto Hanun their lord, thinkest thou that David doeth honor thy father, that he have sent comforters unto thee? Have not David rather sent his servants unto thee to search the city and to spy it out and to overthrow it? So here's his counsel, right? Remember we talk about, right, when it comes to understanding matters, right? It's what people do and it's why they do it. So now they have a suspicion, his servants, right? They said, okay, he's sending servants, but why is he sending servants? I think he's doing it to spy out the land, to gain the advantage. Because they knew David was up and coming, right? As far as a new patriarch, a new king that was rising up in power, right? So they think that's why he's sending his servants. It says in verse 4, whereon Hanun took David's servants and shaved off the one half of their beards and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. So check that out. Really? How about okay, I hear what you're saying, guys, but let's actually break bread. You know, let's find out why he's really doing this, as opposed to making that assumption. But he went along with his servants, right? Just off the bat. He listened to his entourage, as they say, right? Right. It says, and when they told it unto David, he sent to meet them, because the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, tarry at Jericho until your beards be grown, and then return. So for the sake for these men's dignity, he said, look, I don't want you coming back here looking like this. Don't worry, we'll send you clothes, you'll be fine. Just hang out here in Jericho, let your hair grow back, right, enough, and then come back. But as far as this son of this king, don't worry, I got it covered. We'll escalate it, you know, we'll take care of it. And as you read on, you'll see what happens next, which is, oh, okay, you want to come like that? See, we try to deal with you civilly, right? According to the law, you proclaim peace into a city, right? And now you want to kick back and then shame our servants? Now we got to go to war. Didn't have to be this way, but you asked for it. So Apollonius kind of in the same vein, right? He's like, listen, Demetrius, he said all this, but I'm not Demetrius. Come meet us in battle. See what happens. But let's read on in the back of 1 Maccabees 10. So 1 Maccabees chapter 10. I'm in 74, I think. It says, so when Jonathan heard these words of Apollonius, he was moved in his mind and chose 10,000 men. He went out of Jerusalem, where Simon, his brother, met him to help him. So he teamed up with his brother. He said, all right, so we got this Apollonius guy that's part of Demetrius' guys. See, Demetrius was cool, but Apollonius, no, he's talking big trash, right? He wants to escalate. So we're going to have to do something with him. And he pitched his tents against Joppa, which you know is on the coast. But they at Joppa shut him out of the city because Apollonius had a garrison there. So Apollonius already had a garrison set up in the coastal city of Joppa to what? Keep him from being able to set sail against him. Then Jonathan laid siege into it, whereupon they of the city let him in for fear. So Jonathan won Joppa. So he said, oh, okay, y'all want to play like this? All right, I'm going to take out this garrison, right? This was our city anyway. We took this from the Philistines years ago. Now you want to take this thing over? No, it's ours again. So that's a lot of the history. You look at Israel and other surrounding lands, right? That's why the Bible Atlas has got so big, because the borders change all the time after wars, right? After this battle, okay, now it belongs to us. After this battle, now it belongs to Canaan. After this battle, now it belongs to the Romans. This battle now belongs to the Greeks. After this battle, now belongs to Cush. So like cities move hand in hand over history. That's pretty much what history is. It's fighting over territory, right? So they took the city back.
You got land, you got resources,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff that's there,
And this is a port city, so it's extra valuable. Joppa, yeah, it's on the coast, on the West Bank. So it's very important because trade goes back and forth to there. So whoever controls that, they can put the taxes and the tributes on it too. Every time you send a ship out, that's money. Like it says traffic and then Ezekiel, right? Because of that traffic, talking about Babylon. Anyway, let me read on. It says, so Jonathan 1 Joppa, verse 77. Whereof when Apollonius heard, he took 3,000 horsemen with a great host of footmen, and went to Azotus as one that journeyed, and therewithal drew him forth into the plain, because he had a great number of horsemen in whom he put his trust. Same met him in Azotus, which is a city further south. Look at this. He says he's got a host of, it doesn't say the number of footmen, but it says 3,000 horsemen. So with cavalry, you do a lot more damage than you do infantry, right? Infantry have a certain type of maneuverability that they have that cavalry don't. As far as a brute force, cavalry.
Oh, the horses.
Right, cavalry is your horseman. Your infantry is your footman. That's what they call it now. But you got cavalry, right? Usually it's smaller than the footman, right? Than the infantry, but they can get a lot more done, a lot more damage. Because you go in with horses, right? Your horseback, you got the elevational people. You can shoot them with arrows, hit them with spears, right, from a high point. You got the speed on your advantage, right? You got the blunt force. People, you're riding a horseback going at a certain speed. You just hold out a mace or like a blade. You didn't have to swing. If it's sharp and you're going right on that horse, and the guy looks up, that's it. You're finished, yeah. So, cavalry is like, oh man, it's a problem. You gotta be trained in certain techniques to take out horses. Kind of like in modern warfare, being able to take out tanks. You need certain techniques to overthrow tanks because they're strong, right? That's like the modern, horse. It's like the same kind of idea, as opposed to just men meet you out in the field. Okay, now you kind of have like more of a fighting chance, to kind of take them one-on-one. But a guy on a horse, it's like, that's why what was it, Elam, when the Greeks took over Elam and they incorporated the elephants that they used to use. Once Alexander conquered them, he then started using their forces, their elephants, in all their battles going forward. We read about that then a couple chapters back. So with the elephants, even worse. You can put a whole lot of stuff on elephants, even more than horses, right? And then they might move slow, but they can plow through engines of war, right? They can step on you, trample on you. You know what I mean? So.
Let's even think about the Native American versus Esau cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
Native American, they use the horses.
Mm-hmm.
They say bareback, so I don't know.
Right, no saddle. That's tough. Yeah.
Esau had probably shields, like when they first came over, they had shields and weaponry and helmets and all of that stuff. I don't know if they were having helmets. They had
right.
Metal shields and helmets. So
right.
They were able to conquer a lot of
now we got makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had
makeup.
They said, look, get ready. Women and children, stay right here. We going out.
They used to use the animal techniques as far as blend into your surroundings, blend into the thicket, the grass that you can't see them, and surprise them, like guerrilla tactics, spring up on them.
But the Native Americans use the land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Use guerrilla tactics. Use the terrain to your advantage, to where you surprise the enemy, right? And oftentimes they'll use the paint as a means to cover themselves. Kind of like we talk about animals, right? You got the lion, right? They say king of the jungle, when really it's like, yeah, more jungle adjacent. Technically, he was the king of the plain. That's where the lions are at. That's the environment that they're in. Serengeti is a plain. And look at the way the Most High made them to where they're the same color as those reeds, right? Where they go in there, and the way they creep up on you, they could be like, right up on you, and you might just be looking around, walking around in the high grass out there, and then you just look to your left, and you make out their eyes at the last minute. You're like, and then by the minute you see their eyes, it's too close. It's too late. They're too close, and they're on you. Boom. You can't get away. So just imagine the animals. They're by the lake, the gazelles. Just imagine the gazelles, drinking the water. You know what I mean? And then you got the little small one that's not paying attention. The parents already done dipped. The little one's still drinking. The little one looks up. Mom, Dad. You turn around. Lioness is already there. Blah, 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 blah. Boom. And that's it. That's all she wrote. Bye, gazelle. Bye.
The lion eat the big share, the jackals and the hyenas,
Mm-hmm.
and then the bulls eat the rest of it.
Yep, pretty much.
Everybody eats them.
Well, usually, not all the time. Sometimes folks are left out there hanging, depending on who gets the kill and how much they eat of the kill, especially if there's a famine. Sometimes somebody on that totem pole ends up nothing left by the time it gets to them.
The lion leaves some stuff, the little small pieces and stuff.
Right, but I'm just talking about during a time of famine or a drought.
Oh yeah,
Gets tough.
the skinny lion.
Because when we just read this, there's a famine or a drought going on right here during this time, right? So, take all those things into account. We are in the 78. So it says, then Jonathan, oh yeah, I mentioned lions. So they blend into the grass, but then you have the tigers, which blend into the jungle foliage, the way their stripes are. That's the last point I wanted to make. So this thing is heavy how the Most High made the animals to where wherever they're at, they can like blend into their surroundings, whether they're a predator or if they're a prey. They can use camouflage to either play out one role or the other. Same thing. That's why the gray wolves, right? Because they're out in the tundra or in the more snowy regions like the tundra where they can blend into the snow. You won't even see them. You got snow leopards where you'll see them in the snow and it's like you got to really squint sometimes. You can't even see them. By the time you actually can make them out, it's too late. You're a dead man or a dead woman. See, most I'll make them to where they can blend in. That's just one tool they use in their arsenal. But with the wolves, yeah, they had the numbers to their advantage as well, and they had the communication, right? They used to each other, the howling, right?
Or they fight in groups, right? Yeah, they fight in groups.
Mm-hmm. So they call it a wolf pack, right? So it's a coordinated effort. Huh?
They said it's no such thing. Yeah, wolf pack. Oh, I'm getting that twist of it. The lone wolf.
Mm.
There's no lone wolf.
I mean, you could say they're rare. They typically hunt in packs, but sometimes you might have one by himself. It's kind of like what you'll have sometimes, which is like in the Serengeti. You have a male lion without a pride. He doesn't have any lionesses, right, in his stable, so to speak. So he'll be out there, doing his thing as a male lion. You're like, what the hell is a male lion hunting himself for? That's kind of weird because he doesn't have you don't see it as much, but you'll get every now and then. A male lion doesn't have a pride. He'll hunt for himself. You know what I mean?
You need a female lion like that.
Right. But out of necessity, a male lion will hunt himself if he has to. That's like the lone wolf thing. It's not as common, but it does happen.
But they would bring it to the small cubs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They bring some meat to the cubs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me read on them. 79 now. Now Apollonius had left 1,000 horsemen in ambush. That's what started the whole conversation, right? The cavalry, right? And Jonathan knew that there was an ambushment behind him, for they had compassed in his host and cast darts at the people from morning till evening. So trying to use a similar tactic like they did with Judas, right? Where they got behind his rear flank. We read about that in the last chapter, chapter 9.
So who's casting the dots here?
Looks like Apollonius' guys.
Oh.
But the people stood still as Jonathan had commanded them, and so the enemy's horses were, and so the enemy's horses were tired. Then brought Simon forth his host and set them against the footmen, for the horsemen were spent, who were discomfited by him and fled. Right? He told them to hold their spot, then to draw them out so that they could expend their energy. Because once you're tired after traveling so far, now we can use that to our advantage, right? To take you out. So it's a little team effort there, and he used tactics to get Apollonius's horsemen to tire themselves out and tire their horses out. The horsemen, also being scattered in the field, fled to Azotus and went into Beth Dagon, their idol's temple, for safety. So Beth Dagon, it looks like Beth Dagon. That means house of Dagon. We know about Dagon. We read about him in 1 Samuel, right?
Sennacherib, his sons went to the house. No. I think Sennacherib went there and his sons killed him.
But yeah, that Beth Dagon, it's funny that you mentioned Dagon because we're along the coast, right? Because Azotus was along the coast too. And we know that's where the Philistines were, right? The Philistines resided in the west bank of Israel. So we see the names of these places still holding on to their old names or what they were before when the Philistines had them. And they were the stronghold there. It was many years later, but you see some of those names still persist. And some of those traditions still persist too, unfortunately, right? Old idols die hard, right? Because what happens? Nations take over nations. They take over the spoils of the other nation, right? And they look at all the spoils. They go, "Oh, what's this? It's a nice gold depiction of this idol. Oh, what's that idol about? Oh, okay, let's add that to our pantheon of gods." That's what you had with the Greeks and the Romans, right? They conquered the Hamites. They took their gods over and they made them into their own gods. Took the stories and just recast them and said, "Okay, they got this Baal. Let's make them into Zeus. They got Ashtoreth. Okay, let's Ishtar. Let's make it into Hera." And the Romans did the same thing to the Greeks. Changed Zeus to Juno. Changed Zeus to Jupiter, and Hera to Juno, and then did the rest to the other ones. Borrowing gods, borrowing idols. When the Most High said, "Throw them all out. Serve me." But it says in verse 84 now, "But Jonathan set fire on Azotus and the cities round about it, and took their spoils and the temple of Dagon. With them that were fled into it, he burnt with fire." Check that out. See, he set the town ablaze. He set the city ablaze, right? Which is rightful because in the law it tells us that, right? That's what we're supposed to do.
So the idols couldn't save them.
Oh, it's too bad. Because what Dagon was a fish god, right? Because they dealt with Dagon, they worshiped Dagon and said they would be blessed when they would go out to fish because they lived on the coast. So oftentimes the idol is usually depicting something that's a part of their daily habit. That's why I was a fish god, because they would fish because they lived on the coast. So they made up a god and said, "Yes, Dagon, help us with the fishing this season." It's ridiculous, but that's what we do. That's what heathen do, and Israel has done on many occasions as well. And it's funny because fish can't swim in fire. So down Dagon goes.
But even the Roman Catholic Church, they tell us to pray to the saints and a little petition. People say, "Oh, the prayers were answered."
With the rosary.
That's one of the.
Mm-hmm.
And you put petition. You pray to certain saints for certain things, and people say, "Oh yeah, some of the prayers were answered."
Mm-hmm. We were just talking about that, I think, Tuesday. I forget what class it was. not too long ago about that, where we were talking about, it was on the Holy Day, on the Pentecost, remember? Because remember, remember someone came to the class, and they were into the Pentecostal church. They were telling a story about how they had a loved one that was ill, that was bedridden, and then they were doing the boom shakalaka stuff that the Pentecostal church does. And then a couple of days later, the person was healed. So they were trying to make the argument like, look, you guys are teaching, your version of God, and we have our version. He answers your prayers, but he answers our prayers too. It was like, what happened with that is not what this is. It's different. Most I can just allow that person to heal, but it wasn't because of you doing the boom shakalaka praying to the false god of the Pentecostal church. That's not what saved them. That's what happens. If something does happen when they pray to the false god, or Saint Jude helps them, heal, or what's the one for travel?
I forgot.
Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? Why even mention them, right? But if things work out, it locks them into the doctrine even more. Because now they think, oh, like you said, the patron saint was what saved me. My rosary is what saved me. Mother Mary, she's the one that saved me. When it's like, no, that's an Egyptian goddess. That's where that comes from. No, that's an idol. Don't do that.
One more thing. Even with the rosary, I have a thing, it's called a scapula.
Mm-hmm.
So you should wear it around your neck.
Mm-hmm.
With a picture of one saint and a picture of another saint.
Mm-hmm.
Look like you're supposed to wear it. I said, if you die wearing it, you won't suffer eternal fire. I went to my head at work and somebody I thought, what is that around your neck? Because they're able to see it. It's like, you kind of hide it. You put it under your clothes so people really can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So quite, I've seen Mark Antony, the album way back in '99, and we had the scapula. If you ask a Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
they know what a scapula is.
Right.
They wear it. You're supposed to wear it under your clothes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it. You won't suffer eternal death. I used to wear it for years, man.
Mm-hmm.
For years I used to. I don't suffer eternal death. I wear my scap. So people talk about the rosary. They have that too.
Mm-hmm.
So you ask a Catholic, you have to have the scapula too.
Mm-hmm.
Which are two saints in the back. It's like a string. I was, string with a picture of one saint here and the other saint in the back. So you wear that. You ask them about that. I'm like, how do you know about that?
Con, you go across the different idolatries now called ideologies, and they all got these different charms that they put on, right? Whether it's the cross, the scapula, the what's the one? I see this one a lot too. The little hand with the eye in it, the evil eye, right? It's all these little things people wear or put on their clothes, or sometimes get even a tattoo of, right? It's supposed to be protection. But the Most High is like, nah, don't mess with that. I'm your protection. Trust in me. Keep my laws. Right? Anything. And you got the fake Jews. They took the scripture literally about wearing the law as a sign upon your hand, as a front between your eyes. They put on the phylacteries, right? Y'all know what they're called? They tie a block with like a Hebrew character on their hand and then tie a block around their forehead. It's just like, it's not what that was talking about. It's talking about how you think and what you do, your choices, or your thoughts and your actions. That's what it was talking about. And you meditate on the law, you don't have to wear anything because it's already on your head. It's already on your hand because you're thinking about it all the time, so before you're doing it. At best, we just have the fringes on our garment to remind us of the commandments, but we're not rubbing our fringes like, oh, yes, fringes, keep me safe. Fringes, protect me. We're not worshiping the fringes on our garment like an idol. No. It's just something that's part of our clothing where we look upon it, and it's a reminder. Okay, make sure I keep meditating on the laws. That's the purpose that serves. So that's how it's supposed to be used. But the heathen, like I said, they'll take our law and then corrupt it, counterfeit it, and then turn it into something crazy. And just come up with totally unique things from the law and say God said, or their God said. So destroy the temple of Dagon with them that fled into it. He burnt with fire. Verse 85. Thus they were burnt and slain with the sword, well nigh 8,000 men. So that was quite a victory we had here with Jonathan, fighting against them, going to Dagon for help. And like you said, Kahan, why couldn't Dagon help them, right? Verse 86. And from thence Jonathan removed his host and camped against Ascalon, where the men of the city came forth and met him with great pomp. After this returned Jonathan and his host into Jerusalem, having many spoils. Now, when King Alexander heard these things, he honored Jonathan yet more. So he said, "Oh yeah, he took out Apollonius, who was following, Demetrius's guys. Oh, good on you, right? Even better, right? You just saved me a headache because that guy's giving me problems too, right?" It says, "And sent him a buckle of gold, as the use is to be given to such as are of the king's blood." Now we know he's Hebrew, of the house of Aaron, right? A more notable family line than Alexander. But this is them, putting crowns upon themselves, like it says in the first chapter of First Maccabees, right? So to be a part of their blood royale, that's considered, an honor. They do that to this day, right? Where they say you want to be a part of our, 13 bloodlines. You want to be a part of the Rockefeller family or the Rothschild family or the Collins family. These other families, right, that have a lion's share of the resources at their disposal, right, through unrighteous means. They say, yeah, if you're part of these families, you have an easy life, right? You'll get all the breaks. And sometimes you have a different last name out in the open, but they know behind closed doors. Oh yeah, he has his last name out in public as an actor or actress or as a CEO or whatever, but then their actual last name is this. You go into their bloodline. So it's just the heathen attempting to do what the Most High already has for us, which is the chosen, the 12 tribes of Israel, right? The 13 bloodlines, that's all just a counterfeit for the chosen, the 12 tribes of Israel. So let the wicked, continue to emulate us. They shall have their reward. It says, he gave him also Akron with the borders thereof in possession. Let me read this real quick before we close, and then I'll open the floor for any other verses you guys have. But this kind of reminded me of this law, the fact that Jonathan burnt down this temple of Dagon, right? That they were fighting down there in Azotus, in that same region where the Philistines used to dominate. This is in the law, right? Deuteronomy chapter 13. You could link this with First Maccabees 10 and what was the last thing we read? Let's see. Verse 83. Beth Dagon, or Beth Dagon, that just translates into house of Dagon. So 1083, this is Deuteronomy chapter 13. Start from verse 12. So check this out. Deuteronomy 13 and 12, it reads, "If thou shalt hear say in any one of thy cities which Yahweh thy power given thee to dwell there, saying, certain men, the children of Belial," which is this wicked men or naughty men, right? It's not like a place. Not like, oh yeah, I'm going to Belial or Belial, for vacation this summer. When it says children of Belial, this means wicked men or naughty men. "Or go out from among you, and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their cities, saying, let us go and serve other gods which ye have not known. Then shalt thou inquire and make search and ask diligently, and behold, if it be truth, and the thing certain that such abomination is wrought among you." So let's go off of, one person's witness, right? You got to make a diligent search. We can't just be like, oh yeah, they said this idol, these guys are dealing with idols, let's go get them. You have to go there and do an investigation first before you pass judgment, right? So they said it had to hear in the verse, but it's important for you to make note of that. You'll see it in other places too. to make a diligent search. That's one of our fruits of the spirit, right? Diligence, right? To be consistent and to be thorough with anything that we say. Anytime we have something to say or have something we want to do when it comes to decisions, we want to be diligent and thorough. We make our choices and choose what we say. So, behold, if it be truth and the thing certain that such abomination is wrought among you, verse 15, thou shalt surely smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof, with the edge of the sword. And thou shalt gather all the spoil of it into the midst of the street thereof, and shalt burn with fire the city, and all the spoil thereof, every whit, for Yahweh thy power, and it shall be in heat forever, it shall not be built again. And there shall cleave naught of the accursed thing, or the cursed thing, to thine hand, that Yahweh may turn from the fierceness of his anger, and show thee mercy, and have compassion upon thee, and multiply thee, as he has sworn unto thy fathers. This was a temptation sometimes, right? Because, depending on what city we were taking over, they may not have been totally corrupted by idolatry just yet, maybe a certain place here or there, but to then have to destroy an entire city and lay it to heat because they had these cursed things or things that were set up and devoted to idols, to where you can't even deal with that thing anymore. It's like, man, it's a good use of gold and silver, right? It's good craftsmanship, but it's used to make an idol. And they were dealing with this idol. So I can't even mess with it. He's got to burn it. That's why America and the kingdom, no people are going to live here anymore. It's just going to be a perpetual smoke going on, right? Because this whole place is totally given unto idols, all types of corruption and idols, from the courthouses to the school buildings, to the libraries, to the mayor's office, to the state government, to the federal government. It's just idols everywhere, to where America has to face a judgment similar to this. It's here to totally burn with fire. And, the temptation will come in, just like Achan, right? And Joshua. This was before Achan. But see, the Most High had this in the law, right? The Most High knew what was coming. He said, man, I took the Babylonish garment. I took this. I took that. I hid it in my tent because it was nice. I want to burn this. I want to destroy this. It looks good. It's good craftsmanship. But it's like they made it in dedication to something totally wicked. That's why, Joshua was like, why have you troubled us this day? Say the Most High trouble thee. And it's like, after he said that, they fell on him, killed him and his whole house.
But we fall as a nation, and they took our gold and silver, all of that stuff, and they use it for whatever they use it for.
Mm-hmm.
But even now, when the force of the Gentiles, they're going to bring the gold and silver and all that stuff. They're going to give it to us. Because all that stuff, all that stuff is gone. They took it,
Right. So it says, and there shall cleave naught of the accursed thing. I keep saying the accursed. It's just a cursed thing. To thine hand, that Yahweh may turn from the fierceness of his anger, and show thee mercy, and have compassion upon thee, and multiply thee, as he has sworn to thy fathers. When thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep all his commandments, which I command thee this day, do that which is right in the eyes of Yahweh thy power. See that? It says Deuteronomy 13. I read from 12 to the end, which was 18.
But like in Exodus, we spoiled the Egyptians. With that gold and the silver. We spoiled them. We used that gold. Oh, we did go for the golden calf, right?
Right, exactly.
Oh, wow.
That's why you have to, burn that thing utterly to the ground. Because now you've taken the gold and silver, which is useful. You've corrupted it now. You've taken the fabrics and made it into like an outfit or something for an idol. Now you've corrupted it.
We drank it, right?
Made them drink it, yeah. And then, years later, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, first king of the northern kingdom, had a bright idea. oh, I can't have my people, my 10 tribes go down there to where David is in Jerusalem and go to Aaron and do sacrifices. Israel, remember those golden calves back in Egypt? I'm gonna build one in the north and another part in the south part of the northern kingdom. That way, there's one close to you can get to. Offer to that. It's just like, no, no. It would have been bad enough you getting like Ephraim dressed up like a priest and then doing righteous sacrifice. That would have been bad enough because only Aaron's supposed to do that. But now you took an idol and made that into a yearly thing. Come on,
But they
man.
knew it was idol.
Yeah, exactly.
But Ephraim is joined to idol. Leave him alone.
So see the scriptures here. I mean, you mentioned the Catholic Church. It's not ironic that that's like a big one for the northern tribes, especially. Not only them, but when it comes to the 12 tribes of Israel, when it comes to Northern Kingdom, right? Catholic Church is a big one for them.
Go down in the central or south.
Yeah, the roast beef
Yeah.
and idols and all the different. There was a store, of course, Father's office.
Mm-hmm.
All this selling everything. Ouch. Straight up. I went in there one time. The whole place.
They do witchcraft in that place too. I went there 1 year ago. Oh, damn, at night.
That's it. See that? Because that's what you guys talking about. I know they're really popular in New York. They're the botanical stores.
Yeah, I thought it was
And you go in there, it's just like, oh, they got essential oils. Oh, they got some stuff, back rub, rub and salve and stuff. And they always get that back room.
Yeah, that's that back room.
And you go in the back like, oh, I thought it was part of the store. And the store owner's just like, go back there.
Yeah, I had to get night. I said, let me out. They said they couldn't let me out because of the demon they're working with.
Oh, you couldn't open any doors.
I was scared as ever, man. They invited me. I didn't see it on the casket, but they wrap up the slate and they read that white and you can't handle them all over until I have to go to some graveyard to put some paintings there. I'm like, man.
And the thing is, in this room, there's always one main ingredient, always there. Rum.
Yeah.
Can't have it without no rum.
Right.
You
guys see it. Benjamin and Levi. You guys see it, especially being in the Caribbean with the northern tribes. How they get down.
In New York.
I mean, it's the same thing because the Caribbean has come to New York, but you guys see it with the northern tribes that because at least with Ephraim and that too. At least with Ephraim, that's like. At least with Ephraim, that's like been here for like two generations. They don't speak Spanish anymore. They're just like they pretty much become like Judah. They're just American, that and the third. They still might do it a little bit, but they've been here for 2 generations. It kind of dies down. They're doing the Christmas and Easter like everybody else. But yeah, in the Caribbean, it seems like they hold on to it more. Or in the South, they got a lot of Judah that they have their own version of witchcraft called hoodoo. They deal with.
In the Caribbean, they have yearly root shows.
It's that obvious. I'd be scared of them things as a kid.
They got yearly root shows. It's not like it's not going anywhere, and it's especially in Haiti. It's one of the major religions.
Right.
But in Jamaica, it's against the law.
Same way that people talk about your pastors or your priests and stuff like that. Talk about the voodoo guy. Same way. You don't go, that don't work. Yo, check this man. Yo, you solve your power.
Yeah, that's the obvious. Like in Jamaica, that's the obvious one. I'd be scared as a kid.
Everybody know. Nobody. The thing is, they don't mention the pastor. They don't be scared of the pastor. They won't be scared of the priest. They'll be scared.
Because it was so funny.
He's the friendliest guy.
Right. And it's so funny because you'll go there to see the guy everyone's afraid of, and you'll see the pastor and the priest knock on his door for help. Yeah, man.
But in Jamaica, I mean, it's against the law. But they hide and people know what it is and stuff. It's against the law there. I forgot you get whipping or something like that for it.
This a lot of times when I go to the Caribbean. I mean, when I go over to Vegemite, different areas over there, and they find that out, oh, they, can you talk to me? No, you got down there, link me up with. I'm like, damn, you can't do it.
That's profiling, man. That's profiling. Just because I'm Haitian doesn't mean I'm initiated. Come on, man.
Every time I go to SVG, man, I got a family, my family, they always teach me about it. I need $1 billion.
But guess what? IUIC was down in Haiti, and they were down there in some river, and the people they were there, and they were doing the voodoo. You saw that video?
That was the year the roots I'm talking about.
You saw that? Yeah, the IUIC was down there, man. Haiti.
Not only I saw it, I've been there many times when I was down there. Me and Papa's been down there. It's they just use that figure. It's a nice river with a waterfall and all that. You go in and enjoy yourself. But doing that yearly ritual, they take over that area and go there and do your baiting, ritual baiting with all different kind of bush.
Right.
As a kid, I'm saying this as a kid. My grandma used to be every year before school starts, before you go to start the new school year. I used to get bathed with those bushes. So it's something that you grew up and you knew.
Right.
But as a kid, you don't know. It's like, oh, this is what we do.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yes, indeed. It's like what we're talking about in the classes back going into temptations, right? Like that's the key thing. Like when we're out there teaching, even though everybody's so different, we all are tempted the same way. Like you said, people going to you would say, why would you go to them? But it's like it's an easy reason. It's just like anybody would go to anybody that can help them, right? Whether it be professional doctor or a lawyer or what have you, or someone who deals with the spiritual arts, like we're talking about, curious arts, right? You go there because what? Affliction you've been through, or lust of the flesh you want to partake in. It's all the temptation, right? Because like we talked about, physical affliction, possessional affliction, personal affliction. If I go to the priest or the priestess, they can hook me up and be like, look, I don't want to be sick again. I so happened to my parents that were sick. I don't want to be sick. What do I need to do? I don't want to lose my house to a fire or something, right? They might have lost that, everything due to a fire. It's not natural disaster. And they go to them. What can I do so that I can be protected, right? It's a state of desperation.
Yeah. Motivation is protection.
Right.
Most of the time we do it is protection from spirits.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Well, as a response to them being cursed, because they want that physical security, right? As far as not getting sick, not losing their possessions, and they might, as far as personal, like they might want, to find a significant other or something, right? Or they want to be accepted in society. They want to be popular. Like you see, it was like virtual reality. And virtual reality is kind of doing that now, where it's like it's allowing you to go into a virtual world where you can be all the things you can't be in real life. Like you'll see a simulation. People put on a helmet in the simulation. Everybody's just surrounding them, clapping for them. They're in the simulation, like, oh, thank you so much. It's like a high they get, right? People, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so awesome, oh. But that's like the same thing. People go to the witch doctor for the same kind of thing,
Don't forget, Esau was Bohemian.
Right.
Limousine, limousine just going in there, and people on the side of the road, yelling, and they all going there, all the heads of state.
We learned that from him. So just take the religion of man and just copy it. They don't know about that stuff. They're not, I would say that's not part of their culture.
Mm-hmm.
They just adopted that culture and try to make it their own.
Exactly. Because there are depths that are higher up. Because most Masons, they know the basics. And the higher up you go, they know more specific things. But most you might run into, they don't know this stuff. It's just when we get together. We just get together around this time, doing the full moon, doing whatever, just because that's what we do. They really don't know the depths behind it, which is like you're talking about, the Hamite adoration. And the scriptures make it clear. because it calls them what? Sodom. Who was original Sodom? Hamites. Calls them Egypt. Who the original Egypt? Hamites. Calls them Babylon. Who the original Babylon? Hamites. Even what was it? Rebecca. Remember, she said she was grieved because what was it? She said Esau was taking the Hamite wives. She's like, oh my goodness, I'll be grieved to my grave if you bring out one of these Hamites, kind of like with Samson's parents. And then Esau saw his mom. She was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And so you think he married Ishmael, one of Ishmael's daughters or something,
Give her to be for white.
But at least Ishmael's daughter was a Hebrew. But he was, going after the Hamite women until it's like, Isaac and Rebecca, they were both just like, Esau, no, don't marry the Hamites. But yeah, man, that goes back. It goes all the way back to Esau the man, Yes, indeed. But we'll end here. About to go on 3 hours. About to hit a Roman watch's worth of time. But hope everybody was edified with the service today. I enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Know that for next week, we posted here at the bottom. Next week, we're going to be going back to Samuel's again. Before we did 1 Samuel's 18 and 19, that's going to be next week, which is going to be 1 Samuel's 20 and 21. Let me make the, hold on, let me change it. Next week. Going to be next week. Here we go. So make sure you read ahead for that one. So that will say, unless anyone has any other questions or comments, we'll say Shar Shabbat once again. And we'll say Brakateh Hawa by Shem Yahweh Ruach HaKodash, right? Which just means blessed be the Most High in the name of Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. Hopefully everyone was edified with the readings of these chapters, getting into the story now that we got Jonathan as the lead man leading Israel into the victory. And we got to see some nuances when it comes to how we deal with the heathen when it comes to, in combat as well as negotiations, right? The enemy of my enemy, is he always my enemy per se, right? And how the Most High can use our enemy to help us. All the while, we make sure we keep the Most High's commandments first and foremost. Not thinking that, oh, this guy really loves me because, but we just know it's the Most High controlling them to make them to be a use to us as we are of use to the Most High. Because you see, today we get it twisted a lot of times. We think, all niggas can be saved. Oh, all the heathen aren't that bad. And that's not true. So we don't get to see. All right, so Shar Shabbat once again. With that, we'll do the closing prayers. Continue to watch and pray, Israel, as you see the prophecies come to pass. We find that the scriptures, especially in the Olivet Discourse, as far as what Christ tells us. Man should come in his name, saying that they're Christ, shall deceive many, right? Wars, rumors and wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, right? As well as the other prophecies. So we want to make sure we keep an eye out for those things. All right, that will do the closing prayers. Somebody get that door. Brokat the Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Asherah, and Nanawa, Pari Agapan, Thuata Abman, La Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Yashra'Allah. English translation. Blessing Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. At Madwa, Paniwa Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh Basham Yahushai Babakushai Shemai Lanawa Aitha Yamyan Aitha Shulak Mike Allah Wal Allahayim Tazwadakim La Shema Ayo Barak Rab Magan Wa Khaziyat Banya Yash Allah Washalak Lanawa Rabian Kakamad Rabian Da'ith Rabian Mayanad Rabian Sabalanwak Rabian Mamawan Rabian Aqua Rabian Mahabian Rabian Haganad Rakhanaya Wasalak Kau Katayamnawa La Akim Wa Akiwak Wiyash Allah Tamyed Waiwalam Basham Yahusha the Wadaman. English translation Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Mike on the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. The Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh Basham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawe, Wayash Ale, Wabat Yasapariam, Shema, Yashivale, Yahweh, Allah Nawe, Yahweh, English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. So with that, we'll say, Manachat Tawah, which is good afternoon, Wa Shar Shabbat, and happy Sabbath. And once again, Barak Yahweh, blessed be the Most High, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, in the name of Christ, by Ruach HaKodesh, by the Holy Spirit. Stay strong, Israel. Continue to watch and pray. Shalom.